everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. I've got the usual crew here today. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, I have Josh Torres.
Folks, this is it. This is the podcast. This is the week where all our hopes and dreams are realized.
We have Adam Vitale.
What's up?
We have James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
And Chow Min Woo.
How's it going?
So if you listened to our last week's episode of the Tetracast, we talked about how we had finally arrived at the summer gaming news deluge, and we had a lot to cover, but we knew that we had some stuff on the way. We had the Square Enix event that we were looking forward to. We knew Capcom was working on things. We had a couple surprises that we were anticipating we might see, and it turns out this week ended up being the week to remember in terms of coverage for the site, in terms of RPGs to look forward to, in terms of if there's anything that substitutes for the E3 time period. Apparently it was in the last 7 days, because we'll have a lot of news to go through, and some of these are big hitters, and some of these are things we're looking forward to playing relatively soon, and some things are games we're kind of earmarking to set aside time for 2023. I know around this time of year we always kind of say this, but man, next year looks stacked. So we'll get into that. Before we get into the news entirely, though, we do want to kind of cover our usual cadence here, talk about games we've been playing. Some of the things that we have been poking at are still stuff we'll have to reveal at a later time, and some of the things are kind of games that we're looking to cover more into the July timeframe. We have a few features up on the site that I want to also give out shout out to before we go into the major headlines. But this section will be relatively brief because we do have a lot to talk about and we don't want to keep those on the back burner for too long. So in games that we've been playing, it's been a hodgepodge of demos, of early access releases, and things like that. We talked a little bit about Three Hopes access last week. But also we kind of spent time just working on our backlog. Adam's been playing a few things. I've been poking at some of the MMOs. We've been playing Final Fantasy and other things. But we're going to start out with something a little bit out of left field here, because we were talking before the podcast and Chow was talking about how he was playing this game that I actually don't know much about. And that is Illusion of Gaia. So Chow, to lead it off, when someone tells me Illusion of Gaia, what comes to mind is, oh, that's some old RPG from like the PS1 or something, right? I don't really know any. Yeah, I'm not surprised that my information is wrong, because I'm like, I've heard those three words strung together before. What is Illusion of Gaia? And like, why have you decided to take now to start playing through it?
Okay, so what happened is more recently I bought a Mr. FPGA. So this is like a this is like a chip emulation machine, so it's like emulating like the actual hardware, so it's like playing like video games exactly the way it was on the original hardware.
Yeah, we kind of covered this at like a high level like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So some of the stuff about you're getting the hardware needed to play these sorts of things we kind of did cover. Yeah,
so I bought one of those, and one of the things I decided to play was Illusion of Gaia. This is actually like one of my favorite games for the Super Nintendo. But the reason why I decided to play this again, I was playing the beta version because apparently there was a ROM leak, which is the beta version, and the beta version is basically more accurate to the Japanese release. So it's less censored and it's more what you would get if you were playing a Japanese version.
So the beta version was never officially released, or was it?
Never officially released. So what happened was in the official game is that they got licensed by Nintendo. So when Nintendo acquired the rights to translate the game, they basically censored a lot of the game and even changed the title logo to like a giant planet and a big, huge text that says Illusion of Gaia, so that people can, get ideas like, oh, it's like Zelda, like giant text right in your face, right? Versus the Japanese logo at the title screen is basically the two protagonists running in the comet.
Yeah, so, and to kind of expand on that, because like the game is pretty dark, like originally. So there are
it's very dark.
Yeah, there are certain aspects like Nintendo censored stuff. Like I think there was like a native tribe in it that were originally cannibals.
Yes, there is, and there's also a person that is part of the slave trade, but that text did not make it to the final game, obviously.
Yeah, and then there's like it had like a lot of religious references that were just kind of let go by Nintendo, because during that era, this was around 93 or 94, I think. I forgot
It's
what's
94, but yeah,
okay. Yeah,
it's those times.
yeah, early 90s, especially you put religious references in games, you get kind of into dicey territory with that aspect in the West.
Like one thing's even censored for the official release is that you apparently go to a church school. Apparently, you have to
Yeah.
change the pastor to a teacher. That's how
Yeah.
far the censorship goes.
Yeah, and for put into context, this was the second of the quintet games from that quintet trilogy, because there was
Yeah,
Soul Blazer, then Illusion of Gaia, then Terra Enigma.
yeah, it's
After.
basically a direct sequel to Soul Blazer.
Yeah.
And come on, Brian. I mean, our podcast has the opening theme from the third game of this trilogy. And yet
I
we
did not
still
know
have-
Terra Enigma and Illusion of Gaia were in the same series. I've not played either of those. Am I allowed to be
That's
here?
understandable.
maybe you should. I mean, like I said, our opening theme comes from one of their games, and the soundtrack in this game is amazing. I think you should give it a listen.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Terra Enigma never released in North America. That's my excuse.
But it's in Europe.
I don't live in Europe.
I mean, is Europe not part of the world, guys?
Okay,
But
fine.
yeah,
I'll go to Europe and grab a copy of Terra Enigma.
how far are you in your playthrough of this Illusion of Gaia beta now, Chow?
It's a pretty short game, so
Yeah.
you could probably beat it in 7 hours.
Oh,
But
The only
I
thing
like
that
short games.
I think the only thing that's probably bothers me is like there's this collectible item that's very easy to miss in a playthrough. It's called the red jewels, and they're like all over the place. And there's like 50 of them, and you get to fight a secret boss if you can collect all 50 of them.
yeah, I wonder, man. I don't know how the hell you re-release the quintet games. I would like to see them, but I guess the most likely place we'd see them is like the SNES Online service.
I want a full remake. I mean, consider that they remake Act Racer. I feel like it gives them incentive to remake this game eventually. But
I mean,
feel like
is the license still with Nintendo? If the license is still with Nintendo, then I don't know.
I actually think the problem with license with this game is all the staff that worked on it. Have you ever seen like the title screen? This is copyright from like 4 different people at the bottom.
Yeah.
One of them is like from the person that wrote the story, which is Mariko Ohara. She's the main writer for this. She's like a science fiction writer. Well, I'm not sure do they have to get the rights from her, to like remake the story again or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because Quintet is abolished. So where does it go here?
But paint a picture for me. Like, I don't even know. I'm clueless. I feel like, is this a turn-based or ATB like RPG, or is it more like Chrono Trigger
it's an
or
action
Star
RPG.
Ocean?
It's an action RPG. Basically, you don't have any currency. It's just mostly action. You can't buy healing items, but there is healing items in the game that you can find, and
I guess the closest comparison I'd say to someone like for people who are really unfamiliar is like maybe the Mana series.
Oh, okay.
In terms of like game flow,
I think it's more closer to Ys games, I would say, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like that. Basically, in the game, you have the main character. His name is Will, or Tim, according to the beta or the Japanese version.
Wait, his Japanese name is Tim?
Yes, his name went from Tim to Will, and even like
that seems interesting to me because like if that's like that name works perfectly fine in English, even for like early '90s Nintendo. I feel
apparently all the names got renamed in the official release. So Karen becomes Kara, and I think Rob becomes Lance. Everything just completely changed.
That's just interesting because whenever I think of like '90s name changes, it's when they change like Digimon names like Yamato to Matt, things like that. But like, why change like Rob to John or whatever?
But what's even funny if you actually play the French version, there's a French version that has completely different names as well. Now Will becomes Paul, or Tim becomes Paul.
I didn't know about that. That's funny as fuck.
And Princess Karen or Kara is now Flora. They have all different names again.
Nice.
But yeah. So anyways, the gameplay goes like what is it? You get to go to your save point, which is in the dark space inside Gaia. And in there, the main character can transform into different forms. He can fight like his base form, which is as a kid that uses his flute to hit enemies. Or he can transform into this knight called Frieden. And Frieden has like a giant long sword that has very long reach. And he could shoot fireballs later on, if I remembered. But you get like a special ability, like 3 different abilities for each character.
Is it just Like how large is the playable cast?
Basically, it's just you only get to use Tim or Will. He gets another form later on, which is called Shadow. Shadow is like this very fast form that can he goes really fast, but he doesn't have like much special abilities compared to the other two forms. But he is very strong. One of the things
so it's not a party-based RPG at all?
No, it's just you only get to use the main character, and he's trying.
It's just like Final Fantasy 16.
Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe they could get a page from this storyline. I don't know. What is it? The last form, Shadow, has this accessory for his special ability that lets him like go underground and become temporarily invincible for him. I also feel like the last boss is designed to be impossible, but because he has this cheap ability, it kind of gets rid of all the difficulty.
Wait, who has a cheap ability? Tim does?
Where he goes like underground for a split second, then he comes back up. And when he comes back up, the final boss does no damage to you, or anything does no damage to you.
Yeah, so basically the underground like move has like invincibility frames, so
yeah, you just keep spamming it.
System.
I feel like the last boss is designed to be like impossible, but yet people just exploit it anyway, so you just keep abusing this thing to kill it.
Yeah, watching speedruns for this game is really funny.
But yeah, that's the free characters you can play as, or it's the same character, but 3 different forms.
That is kind of Yeast-like.
Let's see. If we're going for the storyline goes from it's a very straightforward storyline. The main character wants to be explored because his dad was lost in the Tower of Babel, and apparently, the emperor or the king was after a treasure that the main character's parents has. The main character's parents are dead, so they were after a treasure that his parents supposed to have, but he doesn't have it, so they sent him to prison. And when he went to prison, the main character's parents or his dad like spoke to him telepathically to tell him to find 6 mystic dolls so that he can get to the Tower of Babel, and in there he'll find the true mystery of the world. That's basically the plot of the game. And when you escape from prison, he sends an assassin to go after you. This assassin's name is called the Black Panther in the Japanese version, so that got censored into the Jackal. So a lot of changes, a lot of major changes. So
I don't know, like are panthers more dangerous than jackals?
No, but when you say the Black Panther, what do you think of? Do you think of the guy from Marvel, or do you think of like the anti political group?
Oh, that's actually a good point. It might be them trying to remove any possibility of alluding to the political group.
So yeah, there was that, and yeah, I mean,
I kind of miss like JRPGs that have like really simple stories. Find the 6 MacGuffins, enter the final place, and find the big secret.
And I could give you the final plot spoilers since this game is for over 25 years old.
I would avoid even then. I would avoid just saying like the ending outright. But I kind of missed the 7 to 10 hour straightforward RPG.
Yeah, I'm starting to think maybe as kids, when you're being these video games back in the day, feeling that we have all the time in the world, maybe it's not like that. Maybe these games just weren't that long.
Here, how long to beat Illusion of Gaia? The one true resource. It's saying 13 hours, so not as short, but brief for a JRPG.
Yeah, that's basically Illusion of Gaia in a nutshell.
How are you enjoying your just the experience playing it on the Mister?
On the Mister, it feels like the real thing. But
what sort of display are you playing it on?
I'm playing on LCD monitor, and I basically changed all the display that mimics a Sony PMD, so it has all the scan line and all that glory.
And is that something that you configure at a hardware level with the Mister?
Yeah, you could do it. You could just set it. It's like, oh, you want a display like that? And I could even hook it up to a CRT if I wanted to, because it has all the wires to do it.
Do you have one?
Yes.
You do? How come you aren't playing on it?
It's in the basement, and it's
in the basement, and it's heavy as hell.
Yeah, it's also like 10,000 pounds. So
yeah, it's too clumsy to set up. I was hoping that they would ever make those super CRT monitors back in the day with Canon, but that idea died.
Yeah, I used to have a 16:9 widescreen CRT. That thing, oh my god, that thing is probably the heaviest piece of electronics I can
I have a heart attack after
ever seen. Like, oh my god, I need a crane to get this out of here. Oh,
The biggest thing
yeah.
is before the flat screens, what was the type of TV that they were like cheap to make, and they could make them like, this is like early 2000s, and they can make them like
Plasma?
70. No, before like 6 years before plasmas. Like they're really big 60-inch TVs, but they were like as fat as CRTs, and they were just huge.
I think
Projector.
you're talking about DLPs, which are
DLPs,
like,
maybe.
it's like a projector in a TV.
Yeah, I remember those.
Oh yeah.
Those-
Maybe those things just look heavy as shit. They aren't quite as heavy as shit. I don't know.
Yeah, but
Oh,
those
when
things
we-
has like a burn and screen burning problems, if I remember.
Mhm.
Well, that's not completely eliminated with OLEDs. I guess newer OLEDs are better, but OLEDs from like 5 years ago weren't. So out of the Soul Blazer trilogy, like, I assume you've played all three?
Yeah. I
Right.
say this is my favorite, but a lot of people will probably say Terra Enigma is their favorite. I mean, it's pretty biased. I mean, maybe because it's the first game I played in the trilogy, then that's why this is my favorite.
Yeah, it's one of those games that trilogy is like whatever you played first is probably your favorite.
And there's no good modern way to play these. Like, well, I guess the Mister is an option, but like they're not on a digital storefront or on PC or anything.
I mean, Adam beat a bunch of games on emulators, including Emerald Dragon. I mean, you can always do the same thing. Just play on the emulator. I mean,
yeah. I mean, find the cartridge if you can, and then sometimes you have limited options.
I also find one thing that's funny for this game is that the Japanese version is actually more expensive than the English.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I kind of figured that if I had to guess, that's what I would have guessed.
Well, usually it's not the case. I mean, certain games, like the Japanese version is dirt cheap, while the American version is like ultra expensive. But this is like the vice versa case. Like if you want a copy of Chrono Trigger, that costs you a lot of money in the US version. But if you buy the Japanese version, it wouldn't even cost you like $20.
Well, why is it that the Japanese version is more expensive though?
This game sold better in America, apparently.
A Nintendo marketing power.
Must be.
Okay. Oh, never mind. I just typed into eBay. I don't know if eBay's even the place you go now for this sort of stuff. But Illusion of Gaia, new, $2,700. Like, oh, that's like the box and everything.
Oh,
And
well.
I'm sure no one has it new.
Okay. I found a cartridge for $25, English version. No, but it's cool to get the opportunity to talk about some of these classic games that, like I said, now I know way more about Illusion of Gaia than I did 20 minutes ago. I just knew it was like, oh, that's the name of some RPG from way back when, right?
Yeah. There's one thing I can't get enough of this game is the main town theme. I love the main town music. But there's this one thing that they added in the Mister recently. They added this feature to support MSU chips. If anyone doesn't know what MSU chip is basically it's a chip that emulates like CD audio, so you could use like audio from like MP3s and stuff to replace the in-game music. And sometimes people take it like, sounds with superior quality and you can play it like that. But although some people argue is like that's not the real thing, and that ruins everything.
It reminds me of the people who still have PlayStation 1 solely for its audio chip, because the audio chip in PS1 is really, really high quality, and like people swear by like that's the way to play CDs.
If I remember, the launch model has the superior chip, and then the later on models has like the inferior chip. So the first model is like more sought after, but the problem with the first model is there was no fan or no ventilation, so it gets hot real quick.
Was it the PS3 or the PS4 where they're like, this can't play audio CDs anymore, and everyone's like, no. I remember.
Probably
Yeah,
PS4, if I have to imagine, because I remember PS3 was very open to a lot of like just past formats,
Especially the initial like 20 gigabyte model or whatever.
Yeah, I still have a one of those just in the closet that I need to like fix because I got YLOD, but it's still there. I don't know if anyone like can fix it anymore, but it's one of those projects that like I'll get around to it one day maybe.
Well, now that you have the option to subscribe to PlayStation Premium to play all your PS3 and PSN classic games, maybe
At the very least, when that launched recently in the West, they or like, at least in America, like they did have 60 hertz versions of the games, like
right.
This is now, so I mean, it's one of those things that's like it just initially made a bad showing and releasing in a region that it released in a region that originally supported 60 hertz, but for some reason they released 50 hertz over there, which, like, I have no idea what's going on there. But at the very least, you have 60 hertz versions in the West for whatever that's worth.
I think it has to do with their voltage system. That's why they stick with 50 hertz. They don't know where they're.
No, it's good to get the opportunity to follow up on that because we kind of assume. It's not that we assume the worst, but because you're right, that's a good way to put it. It was a bad showing to have that. Is that the initial here's how they play on this from this other region? There are 50 hertz versions. Oh no.
Yeah, just don't play fighting games. You play like a slowed down version.
Play it on the Mister to get your classic frame pacing slowdown.
There's a bunch of games that I played on the Super Nintendo that has a lot of slowdowns, like Tetris Attack. If anyone played that, or Panel de Pon.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
When the screen fills up, there'll be like massive slowdowns, and you can't do that really in emulation. It'll be
that's like part of it's kind of a weird thing to think about these days, especially with everyone wanting consistent frame rates. But back then, some games had that's intrinsic to their design of having slowdown, like shmups. If you didn't have slowdown there, it'd be impossible to react to incoming projectiles.
My favorite one is in Steam. There was Mushihime-sama released on Steam, and it had slowdowns. And somebody complained in the Steam community, is like, this game has slowdowns. What can I do to fix this? It's like, no, this is how the game's intentionally designed. So, you want the slowdowns. Why would you not want slowdowns? And some people feel that the game need to be steady 60 FPS. But you know what? If you don't have slowdown, certain parts is just unplayable,
Yeah.
It's impossible to dodge without the bullets slowing down your face.
But thanks for educating me on Illusion of Gaia and a little bit more about your experience with the Mister, because we talked a little bit about how you had set it up, but hadn't had a chance to play much or do much other than just tinker with it. So kind of cool that you're getting the opportunity to visit some.
I feel like that's with all devices. You always spend so much time tinkering with it and never time to play it.
Well, when James got his Steam Deck, he started 20 games. It sounded like, obviously not to really play them, but just to kind of see how they all functioned and worked, whether or not, and compared to how they were listed as being compatible or not.
Yeah, pretty much.
So moving on, before the podcast, we did talk a little bit to Josh about how he had been playing over the last couple of weeks. There have been some demos that have been dropping in certain places, or some early access games being made available. Steam had one of their, I forget what they're calling it, their Next Fest or Summer Fest, one of their different demo opportunities. And you brought up just in passing to me that you would touched on a few of the games available on there. I don't know if you wanted to take the opportunity to talk about any of the things that you had poked at on there.
Yeah. Before I poked at that, the other day, .mu came out with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. Basically, a beat 'em up, very much into the homage to Turtles in Time, and what would that look like in a modern setting with a few, modern flourishes there. I was able to do a full playthrough with a full 6-man party on the hardest difficulty when that came out. And that game is a lot of fun for people who really like the TMNT beat 'em up back in the day. That was on the Super Nintendo. It's a great time, great experience. So well worth the price that they're asking for. In my opinion.
Is that on PC or on Switch, or what was it?
On everything.
On everything.
On everything, but the crossplay situation is very weird right now. I don't know if they plan to update it to fully support crossplay, but the crossplay is in isolation. Between PS4 and PS5, they can crossplay. I don't know if Switch can crossplay with anyone, but between the Xbox versions and the Windows Store version, I think they can crossplay. And then the Steam and Epic Game Store versions, people have to go out of there, do some weird shit. People have said it is possible, but they have to do some weird linking to Epic account, and then maybe it'll work, maybe it'll not.
I will say that I did actually try out a bit of the TMNT game, and at least the PC Game Pass version says that you can crossplay with Epic Games. So maybe you can also crossplay with Steam on the Windows Store version. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. There's still a lot of investigation over that. I'm not exactly too sure what people have found. But all my friends and I just agreed, we'll just get the Steam version and make it very easy for us. So, it is very much like that old TMNT beat 'em up game, but it does have a few new systems in the mix. You just don't have the basic attack. You have a dodge backflip move. into like a dodge attack. You have like a super meter that you can fill up and then do a super attack. And then like when you taunt in the game, you can fill up a super meter, and it's just a lot of fun. It's longer than you think. I won't say how many stages there are for people who like want to keep that surprise, but I will say that is longer than I thought, and it for good like it's like a good length. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's like, wow, this is a really meaty package, and the sprites aren't like the old game. They're a little bit more squished down and the designs are more reminiscent of like the new TMNT cartoon, not the old '90s one. So like they're kind of more like it's fine. Like it looks really really nice. It's just like, but they're for people who've like played the original beat 'em up, like in arcades or on the Super Nintendo, they're a bit more squished down. You do have like the four turtles playable. Obviously, I played Raphael.
I was actually going to ask,
Sai.
like, okay,
Yep.
my TMNT knowledge. You say 6 characters, so 4 turtles, Splinter, and Casey. Is that it?
It is Splinter and April.
Oh, April.
Yep.
I thought they said Casey was coming or something.
Casey is playable, but you have to beat the game once. So Casey is
okay.
there as an unlockable character. So I haven't tried out Casey yet, but I do have him unlocked. And it's interesting because this game has there's like a very light RPG mechanics to it too, where there's like a hidden XP bar for the character that you're playing, and like you can level everyone up separately. But like as you're playing through the game, they'll like level up, and sometimes they'll get like they'll raise like their max HP like by 1, and then other times they'll like, oh, you gain a new super attack. You can now do a super attack in the air, and then like later on you can do a super attack as you're doing like the backflip dodge move. So you gain new super attacks along with HP, and also once you get like reach level 8, you get you have the option to store 3 super attacks, and you can use them however you want, like doing separate super attacks, but you can also use it to go into radical mode, where like you get into like a powered up state. You move a little you move around the screen a little bit faster and attack a little faster and do more damage. So that's kind of like the light RPG elements there. Not to say that like
Yeah, I don't know how much like oxygen I should like. Just because we talk about a game here at the starting of this podcast, we play more than RPGs. We're not saying that Shredder's Revenge is an RPG. We're not going to put up a review. Well, if you wanted to review it, I'm sure Alex wouldn't say no. If you wanted to be silly.
No, it's so light. Yeah,
we play other games. That's why we talk about like Tsukihime and all sorts of things, visual novels, point and click action games. So
there's also one of the games. I don't know where it started, but there's also one of the games that is starting to have VHS tapes as collectibles as well. There's collectibles in the game, like for different characters, like in the TMT verse. So like I forget their names of one of the characters that you rescue. You try to find her secret diaries as collectibles. For another NPC, you collect VHS tapes for them. And it's like, yep, we're now at the point in video games where VHS tapes are just like, it's common for them to be collectibles in a video game now. And I'm like, and I told my friends like, well, when are we gonna get to the point where like DVDs are collectibles? And they're like, oh no. So
two questions. I have two questions.
Yeah,
is Rocksteady or Bebop in the game?
Yes, they are. They are there, and they are together frequently in the game.
Cool.
Yeah. Wait, so are those the two like pigs?
Yeah, the Rocksteady's the rhino.
Oh, a rhino
Bebop's
and a pig.
Yeah. So like they're like one of the first villains that you meet separately then together. This game also has like the automatic scrolling stages. So like one of the first scrolling stages is them in a car, and like you're chasing after them with the turtles. So like as you're going along the way, there's obstacles, and then that's like 6-player mode of this game is really fun. It is chaotic as hell. You don't know what the fuck is happening like half the time, but it's like just a lot of fun. Because this game has like when someone goes down, you can go out and pick them up again, so it doesn't waste a life. And you can also share HP with people. So like if you see someone low on health, you can like go high five them, and it'll give them 2 health from your health pool, which is really cool. And this game has like a greatest hits of like some like the most iconic villains from TMNT lore. You have the Rat King there. You had like the Triceratons, which are like basically the Triceratop enemies that the turtles face, and then along with a whole bunch more. I won't obviously spoil like the rest of them, but for people who who can recognize TMNT villains at a distance. Like before each stage, you see like a silhouette of like the boss that you're gonna face. So like some people were like, "Oh, we're gonna face this villain or this boss at this stage." So it's just a lot of fun. They really nailed it with that game. For the Steam Next Fest stuff, I got to try out 3 demos so far. I want to play a little bit more with some other games. One of them is not an RPG. It was I think it's like Midnight Action Express. Um, that is a really cool like isometric action game where it really emphasizes like going through levels fast, beating up enemies, using like weapons in the environment for them to get in your way. They drop weapons and then they have durability, so you beat them up. But then some weapons you throw automatically, so it's very very frenetic, very like it has a really good pace to it. That was pretty cool. The other one I played was Tyrant's Blessing, which is a game that we mentioned here on the podcast last week when we covered it for news. I was like, oh, it's on the Steam Next Fest. So I played a couple levels of that. And it does remind me a little bit of Into the Breach, where you can see exactly what the enemies, like what who they're targeting and what zone they'll be targeting. So you use a lot of skills from like your 3 party members and like a dog as an assistant to like reposition them, make sure that no one's taking damage or taking as little damage as you can on the next turn. And there's some interesting environmental stuff that is a little bit like Into the Breach as well, where like you have an archer character shoot their bow and arrow, and when they hit someone with it, that pushes the enemy back. So if like the enemy is like if there's like a tree behind the enemy and you shoot them with the bow and arrow, you can not only take damage off of them from the bow and arrow itself, but also on the collision of the tree. So it takes off 2 HP instead of 1 because you're using the environment to your advantage to like knock them into other parts of the environment. And then like you can use like the dog assistant to like pull people out of the way, out of damage, incoming damage. But I mean the demo is pretty light in terms of like experimentation. You only get like 4 characters and that dog, but in the character selection menu, there's a lot more characters in the full game that will have their own unique skill set. You can also get runes to power up your skills, and you get runes by this in-game shop where you spend like this star currency, which you can get by like completing challenges and levels. So the better you do in levels, completing their sub objectives, you get these star currencies to purchase stuff at the shop. You can also use like in-game money that you get to purchase like consumables as well. So that game is looking really really cool.
God, my brain is just poisoned now. When you say like star currency, I'm like, oh no, premium transactions or whatever. Like that's what my brain immediately goes to.
No, it's not like that. You just get it for completing sub-objectives in levels. So that was a cool one to mess around with. I definitely want to see more of it in the full game and see how more of the characters like how they function. And then the last Steam Next Fest demo that I played was one that you're looking forward to, Brian, Los Eidolons. This is one of the beefier demos. This was like 18 or 19 gigs. I'm like, oh my god. Usually these Steam Next Fest demos are very small slices of the game.
I remember when Lost Eidolons was first. I don't know if it was announced or when it got a Steam page, but it's like a Fire Emblem game, but with an art style that's more like the recent Witcher games, like very Western.
Yeah, very Western. Yeah, you're on the right track. It's very much like a Fire Emblem strategy RPG type with like a Western RPG graphical style on it. So this one was a little bit frustrating to start from the get-go because it has like an unskippable cutscene at the very beginning before you get to the main menu, and that cutscene was like 5 to 6 minutes. I swear to God, I'm like, I was in it. I was like, if this doesn't end like in the next like 30 seconds, I'm gonna quit. And there's no way to skip it. It was basically just setting up like the world and like some very basic like. Not even setting up like the battles that you're getting into, but it was just like at the very beginning, like it kind of perhaps like this medieval world, what's going on about like money rules all, kind of those vague theme flavorings, and then another cutscene that like has one of the characters that you control, kind kind of setting him up of like what kind of character this is. So like there's like a parade going on in this village, this town. This kid like his silver, like is like the money that he's trying to hold on to, like he lets go of it in the middle of like this march. So like he goes and gets it, and then like that pisses off like the knights there, and he's about to get like murked by them. And then one of the characters that you eventually play is like, hey, hold on, he's just a kid. He's just trying to get his money, and then like he barely evades like being executed on the spot essentially. And then since I haven't been feeling all that well lately, so I only got to play just a little bit of this. But it like the very first mission is like you're kind of thrust into it with like that dude from the beginning and like 3 other like dudes that are with him. I don't really know any of them. Like obviously it's a slice of gameplay demo, so it's hard to like build any like sort of like why do you care about these characters sort of deal.
They're more just units. Is it a class-based game? Like Fire Emblem?
I think there's a class base going on because there is definitely like advantages and disadvantages in combat on like a certain weapon types on it. The very first one is like, hey, get to this point, like get your units to this point and survive, because they're surrounded by all sides. There's not really much context of like why they're being surrounded by all sides, but it's just like it's basically teaching you like basic mechanics like, hey, move here, attack here. Some of your units have skills, so some of them have like taunt skills where you attack them and then they'll be focused on you. Some of them have like elemental skills, so you can like use like a water slash spell, and whenever you attack a unit, it does that effect where like it zooms into the battle very briefly to show you what's going on. It kind of reminded me of like how Last Remnant zooms in on like the battles, and then you see someone like slashing, and then it zooms back out on like on the battlefield. And it's kind of interesting because of the graphical fidelity it has. Like any changes in the terrain, you can already see for yourself. You don't need to like. It'll show you via icon also if you wanted it to. But say as you're trying to escape this level, like to the topmost part of the map, you'll see that there's mud in the way, and like I didn't even like register that like, hey, this mud here will have a very bad effect on units if I like my units step into it, because once I stepped into like that mud, that unit had like the wet effect on it, so they can only move like a certain amount of spaces at a time. So like they had very limited movement, and I could have easily seen that coming if I just connected the dots and like, oh, okay, mud means bad. So now I have to like kind of like babysit this unit on the way there as like more and more units are starting to like appear as reinforcements from all sides, and it's like I need to get out of here while trying to get anyone like eliminate all the enemies out of my way, and trying to get this unit over here that actually stepped in mud. So it does have like that kind of those terrain effects on you that you do have to pay attention to it. And it also does have like when you're starting the game, obviously it has your typical difficulty options, but as well has like the casual and permadeath mode. The interesting thing about the permadeath mode is that you'll still lose. Obviously, when you lose units in combat, you lose them forever. But they say if they're like significant people in the story, they'll still appear in story cutscenes. It very specifically mentions that like they'll still appear in cutscenes even if you lose them. Like, okay.
Well, like even classic Fire Emblem has done that where they just get injured, like they can't fight anymore.
Yeah,
which I think is an okay way to do it. Obviously, it'd be really kind of cool to see like a game that might be kind of interesting, like a Fire Emblem like game where the story is configured in a way that like people will take different people's positions in the story if they do pass in battle. Yeah. That's obviously that becomes like a logistical nightmare to determine all the permutations. As far as Lost Eidolons, I probably won't get around to playing the demo because I think it's one of those limited ones where we're recording this on the 17th. Is it the 17th? And it's only up. It's only up until the 20th.
Yeah, it's 18th today as we're recording, and then
18th.
I don't know if they're up to like the 23rd or what. I forgot exactly when they stop. But yeah, it is. It is like it's a very slice of life demo. It's like it's hard to get into it for me because like I don't know any of these characters already,
right?
So it's kind of like you're testing out basic gameplay systems more so than like saying what the story is. And on top of like the unskippable cutscene at the beginning, I already had like kind of like a sort of like weird grudge against stuff. Like, come on, I just wanted to get to the gameplay. I didn't care. I don't need to see all this stuff at the very beginning. But it's kind of. I'd be very interested to see how well it like.
Well, it's
It
slated to come
manipulates its
out
level
in
design.
it's slated to come out like Q3 of this year still.
Yeah.
So only
Yeah.
a couple months away.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see like how well they like design their levels. So like if there's like anything in the environment that like is that could be a threat to you, if like they'll continue to lean more into that, like, oh, there's like some a swamp area here, for example, like you definitely don't want to go into there. It doesn't convey it to you like through a tutorial menu or like a pop-up. It's just like it's the mistake that you made there. Now live with it. Now you know. Now you've learned. So that was interesting. But yeah, those are the things that I've been up to for this past chaotic week.
No, it has been a week, especially on the news front, and we're going to start transitioning over into that. So before we get straight into that, thanks you for talking about your time with the Illusion of Gaia, Chow, and with the various demos that you had played, Josh, and a lot more stuff on the way in terms of games we've been playing as things start going, things start releasing in late June and going into July. Alongside all the news that we've been updating up on RPGsite.net, we do have a handful of features as well. Some of these we had kind of previously talked about potentially doing on earlier episodes of the podcast. One of which is we talked a couple weeks ago about the announcement of the Romancing Saga Minstrel Song Remaster, which is coming out this winter. Adam is a very big fan and proponent of the Saga series, specifically Romancing Saga Minstrel Song. So he wrote up his thoughts on basically what Romancing Saga Minstrel Song is, his opinions on the game, what he's looking forward to in the remaster. He's basically just saying, like, we've seen a few Saga remasters now. What he hopes Minstrel Song does that is similar to those, what he hopes it's different. He hopes people look past the art style, which is admittedly a kind of an acquired taste. So go ahead and look at that up on the site. It is Romancing Saga Minstrel Song is weird as heck, but it rules.
I also want to mention I found it really adorable when because Adam, you brought this to our attention. Like one of the quote retweets for your article was a Japanese reader who like used machine translation to like read your article, and I thought that was really adorable. And like I'm like, that's awesome.
Can I say the fans are dedicated for this series?
Yeah.
Well, Adam mentioned this in his article, but this Saga semi rebirth that we've had the last couple of years, it seems like they've we kind of tease Square Enix sometimes, especially with their Western efforts, about not calibrating their sales expectations, but it seems like all their efforts with the Saga series have met their expectations, which is why they're keeping doing them. So it's kind of cool that they can just run this along as like a BC project alongside all their other work and see, a good response to it and have kind of like this dedication of fans and get more people exposed to Saga. And we know they're working on a new game as well. And based on Adam's article, it makes me really interested in trying Minstrel Song when it comes out this winter.
What about the gacha game, guys?
Well, I'm glad that it exists to keep everything else afloat.
Thank God for the gacha game. How weird is that?
Considering the state of some of Square's non-Final Fantasy mobile games, the fact that the gacha still exists in the West is actually pretty impressive.
Look, I have no qualms about the gacha game existing if that means more Saga, and that's the way we get Saga.
I'm in the same viewpoint. I feel like if we're gonna get more games because of those gacha games, give me all of it.
This is an article that Josh put up earlier in this week, and it's also Square Enix related slightly. It's about a mod that recently released to a new version or a 1.0 version for the PC versions of the Kingdom Hearts games, specifically Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and Birth by Sleep, so the 1.5, 2.5 package. And this is called the Refixed mod. I hope I get that right. RE:fixed mod. So basically, Josh went ahead and kind of detailed what this is. The creators behind the mod created a release trailer for it that released a little over a week ago now. And basically just talking about how even when these games came out on PC, especially Kingdom Hearts 3, I believe James at the time wrote up something for it. It was a really strong effort compared to some other Square PC efforts that have been kind of more mediocre to bad. The Kingdom Hearts on the Epic Game Store when they released last year were quite good, quite a good port and a good way to experience the games, but not perfect. They had made a few subtle changes or a few things where the games would kind of they held on to, like, for instance, things that were introduced later in Birth by Sleep weren't backported into the earlier games for like the ways that the menus worked or that configuring your skills worked. Refixed allows you to do that. So I don't know if Josh, you want to just kind of go really quickly through why you felt like this was worth highlighting and some of the things that it brings forward to the Kingdom Hearts games on PC.
Yeah, like one of the like fixes out from the get go for a lot of people is now that the cutscenes that have their 30 FPS limiter disabled, so all of them can run 60 FPS and beyond for the cutscenes. There's some interesting ones that they added in here. So like for Kingdom Hearts 1, obviously that was like the first entry in the series. A lot of quality of life enhancements didn't make their way there. Like quickly unequipping and equipping abilities via the triangle button. That still didn't make its way to that, but with the refixed mod, they reintroduced that. One of the most contentious ones that a lot of people on our social media really did not like to hear was, if for the Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix features that this mod brings, is when you start a new game, you have the option to skip the entire Roxas segment intro if you want to, and go straight to Sora.
It's fine. I love the Roxas segment, but for replays, it's a slog to go through.
I'm just trying to think that for people, it's like, you understand that, like, when you want to replay this game, like, and you've already seen that a couple of times, for those people, it's like kind of just, it's not a great experience for like multiple replays. You're not there for the story. You just want to get to the game right away, you know. So that opens up, like, if you decide to skip the Roxas section, you just have to pick like the weapons, the weapon you want from the Dive to the Heart as Roxas, and after you pick that, you're immediately Sora right away after that. So that's what it does. This also added the dual audio option to Kingdom Hearts 2 and Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep specifically, so people who want to play them in the Japanese voices.
I'm surprised the mod is allowed to do that.
Yeah, I know.
That's a huge change, and I'm surprised that you don't run into issues with that. But
the best thing about the Japanese voices is Riku and Sora. Those become well-known voice actors later on in their life. They were like child actors, but yeah, they're still big names today.
It's kind of interesting because it's like the opposite in English, where Haley Joel Osment pretty much voices Sora. Like I can't name another role of his other than that.
Forrest Gump.
And then with Kingdom Hearts 2, they also backported a feature that was in Kingdom Hearts 3, where you can like reorganize your magic on the fly in the command menu. So if you want to have your spells in a very specific order, you can reorder them just seamlessly like that. And then like for Birth by Sleep, one of the interesting ones for Birth by Sleep is that they re-implemented like the ability to rename your finishers, which was in the PSP version, but it was never in the Xbox and PC ports of Birth by Sleep. So they allowed you to do that again. So that's kind of like some of the highlights there. If you're interested in playing these games with some of these features, go read my news piece on it, because I kind of give a thorough breakdown on what you can expect from this refix mod. And I wanted to emphasize that this is, like, all the options in it are optional, and it's very not intrusive. It doesn't change the content in the game. It doesn't change the gameplay in the game. It's very much just, if you want just, some slightly better quality of life and tweaks there here and there, have at it. Over on the GitHub page for the refix mod project, I don't know. They haven't really specifically stated if they're gonna implement this mod in Chain of Memories and Dream Drop Distance. But I think they are, because now that I'm like looking at it for the first time since I published that, they changed the Chain of Memories status from not present to they're now working on Chain of Memories, and I assume after Chain of Memories they're gonna do work on Dream Drop Distance for that mod as well. So the major games have been dealt with, and now they're getting onto the rest of the games.
So wait, Dream Drop Distance has not been fixed?
I imagine the Dream Drop Distance one is they're gonna make since it's like a cutscene compilation for that one. I think they're
no. Dream Drop Distance isn't cutscene. It's 355/2 is the
right,
one.
That's right. I forgot.
Or 350, whatever the number is.
Okay, yeah.
And I actually had to remind myself, wait, is Chain of Memories? Yeah, Chain of Memories is playable because it's one Chain of Memories.
Chain of Memories is like originally the Game Boy Advance thing with the cards, and then
but this is the PS2 version that's playable.
Yeah, there's the PS2 version, and then Dream Drop Distance was the 3DS game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't stand that Kingdom Hearts game because every time it's like you're like so into the action, then all of a sudden you're forced to switch the character without out of your control. It's like
I wonder what they're gonna do for that. I'm sure they're gonna I'm sure they're gonna if that's like annoying you, it must be annoying others. I wonder if they're gonna tweak that aspect of Dream Drop Distance refixed. I didn't actually consider that.
Well, I'm actually like a decent Kingdom Hearts fan. Like I watched the ending of Melody of Memory so that I could, catch the one nugget of new story there. I even watched some of the cutscenes from the mobile game about a year and a half ago now. But like I somehow just skipped Dream Drop Distance and just like don't really care to like ever go back to it. I don't know. It just the concept never interested me. I never felt like I needed to play it to play 3. I don't know. Like I never got around to Dream Drop Distance, and I'm not really itching to. So
I might not sound like it, but I used to be a pretty hardcore Kingdom Hearts fan until that game came out. Then I just
apparently I avoided a bullet then. But yeah, thanks for covering that mod for us. And it's, I don't know, those are actually kind of my favorite style of mods. I don't say hate. Hate's a strong word. When Final Fantasy VII Remake, more on that later, went to the Epic Games Store and people started talking about like costume mods for the characters. Like I just don't care about that. Like I really don't care about like cosmetic things or like now Aerith looks like a Sailor Scout or whatever. Like, but I like kind of mods that just kind of tweak systems, not in a way where it's obtrusive or anything like that, but kind of backporting features.
Like a non-obtrusive mod. That was like the most, almost like the best words to hear. Like, thank you.
Yeah. The only thing about costumes in this one is if you played like the Kingdom Hearts games like on like Christmas or like Halloween, they'll like switch up the costumes for that holiday. That's it.
Does the mod do that, or is that baked into the game?
The mod does that.
Oh, okay. That one's, I think, okay. That's interesting.
I mean,
if you're just playing it on the holiday, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So wait, could you like switch, like, let's just say that you're in the Toy Story world and you could use that outfit in a different world? Is that possible?
I mean, this isn't for Kingdom Hearts 3, so there wouldn't be a Toy Story world. But
I was just using.
But like if you're like in another world and like you're playing on like Halloween, they'll be in their Halloween outfits for that world.
That's on the fringe, but I think I'm okay with that because it's just for one day and it's just for fun.
Yeah,
and it's optional anyway.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other features that are up on the site. This is one that I think James brought it up on one of the previous episodes of the podcast. We've talked a few times in a few different contexts about about receiving the Steam Deck, his time with it, some of the games he's played on it. He's put up a list of some of the best RPGs to go play on the Steam Deck. So this includes games such as like Legend of Grimrock, Persona 4 Golden, which is on PC. More on that later. Some of the Pixel remasters. Obviously, they don't have a Switch version, despite how seemingly perfect fit it might be, but you can play those on Steam Deck. So James, I don't know if you just wanted to give any other details about like what you decided to put on the list here and which ones are some of your absolute favorites that you think work perfectly with Steam Deck.
So it was a kind of a tough article to make because I didn't want to do like an article that was every single RPG playable on Steam Deck. That would be unwieldy. But at the same time, I wanted it to be like a little bit curated, like anything that's like Steam Deck verified, which is Valve's classification for it, or Steam Deck playable, which is again something that Valve has specifically tested and says this works well. I have a list for those, but then there's so many games that are listed as unsupported or untested that work perfectly fine. Like one example in the article is Trails in the Sky. For a while, it had issues with its movies, but a recent Proton update made it so that all of the like FMVs work perfectly fine, no issues. So there is merit in like actually sitting down and testing games, because just because they were unsupported when they were tested originally doesn't mean necessarily that they're still not going to work and that sort of thing.
Yeah, Trails in the Sky is kind of a good one because of the third game being, at least in English, PC only. Mm-hmm. So you don't get the Vita Switch experience for most of that series, but you can play Trails 3 on Steam Deck. I mean, obviously, it's kind of it's a kind of a hardware hurdle that you have to monetarily overcome, but at least you can kind of get that handheld experience with that in that way.
But that article might be seeing some updates in the recent future, in the near future, with some things, both that came to Steam and are coming to Steam in the future.
God, yeah, I need to update it.
And then the last feature we have up on the site, this is actually kind of ties a little bit into the discussion about mods earlier, is we got up a new review for the Switch version of Star Wars: The Knights of the Old Republic 2. I had an extra "the" there. Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic 2. So Scott White, again, was able to put up a review for this. He did review the Switch port of Knights of the Old Republic 1 last year. And basically, he thinks that this is the best way to experience Knights of the Old Republic 2. At least I believe that he stated it that clearly. He feels really strongly about the game. He thinks that it's a really fun way to play it. If you don't have access to a PC that has all the PC version was updated and like tweaked to work with HD displays and things like that back in like 2016. But not everyone has access to a good PC, even to play a game from several years ago. But thought that the Switch version of the game was really good. I don't know if he specifically covered the mod aspect of it as much. He looks like he kind of mostly covered just the base game.
It's not out yet.
Okay. Well, that explains why he mostly covered the base game.
Yeah, he mentions it that it'll be coming, but obviously he couldn't because it's not out yet. So
I do know that he mentioned, I forget if this, I don't know if this actually got covered in his review, but he accidentally activated a debug mode while he was playing it. So that was kind of fun. That was kind of fun to witness from the side. He was able to move the camera and give himself infinite health or things like that. And we were talking about, no, the original game had some cheats or whatever, we think, but no, he had somehow gotten to the debug mode, which is always kind of fun when you have pre-release access to these games and you can kind of get work around the edges like that. But yeah, Knights of the Old Republic 2, I think it's one of my favorites. For a couple of years ago, we did our Games of the Decade feature, and that could have been. Oh no, that wouldn't have been. That would have been too old. If we did Games of the Millennia feature, it would have been one that I could potentially have put up on there. It's one of my
games
favorites.
of our entire lifetime.
There we go. So that is the last feature I wanted to shout out for being up on the site. The Romancing Saga feature from Adam. Not quite a feature, but a good, really nice, solid, thorough reporting on the mod feature for the Kingdom Hearts PC games. We might just tag it over to be a feature now. Why not? And then James has put his list of playable on the Steam Deck, apparently soon to be updated, and the Switch review for Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic 2. Man, it's been a busy week. And speaking of, we kind of preluded to this at the end of the podcast last week. We kind of knew all the events that were going to be coming up in the previous 7 days. And one of which that we had circled on our calendars was I hope I get this right, Final Fantasy VII 25th anniversary stream event from Square Enix, where we were expecting news for what is in the future for the remake series, what are other aspects of the project that are going to be announced. We obviously have the Ever Crisis game that we're waiting for more information of. The main headline here, obviously, if you're listening to this, you're likely already aware, but we're going to cover it anyways, is that they announced Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It is the second part of the remake, confirmed to be a trilogy, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will release next winter. So that's either late 2023 or early 2024.
Next winter, only for the PlayStation 5.
So yeah, only for PS5, and we got a new trailer to go along with it. The trailer is kind of an interesting take on it because it's a first look trailer, very much a teaser type trailer. It's a decent length. It's a minute and a half, but the most interesting part of the trailer is the narration over it, the voiceover.
I guess before we continue, for people who didn't complete FF7 Remake, this is inherently a shitload of spoilers from that. We're sorry, but it's hard to talk about this game without acknowledging what happened in the remake. So maybe skip ahead a little if you don't want to hear that part of it.
All right, everyone here is okay with spoilers of at least the conclusion of the first game. So the first game obviously covered the Midgar section of Final Fantasy VII with the twist involving these, I forget their official name in game, the ghost creatures.
I forget the
Wrath?
wraiths. I'm blanking on what they're called in game, but basically, whenever the story was seeming to diverge from the original narrative, they were there to bring the cast back on track. Including, this is kind of the most funniest part of the game in retrospect, including when Barrett fucking dies and then gets revived because he's not supposed to die yet at the end. But then at the end of the game, they like overtake Midgar. You have this giant battle against this like apparition of destiny. It feels so silly to try to say this straight laced, but basically, the reason why there's a tagline at the end of the Final Fantasy VII Remake that says the unknown journey will continue, effectively alluding to the fact that based on the conclusion of Final Fantasy VII Remake, the part 1 of the trilogy, now they are no longer shackled to history or destiny as it was written. So basically, the second and third part of the game are seemingly now in universe allowed to diverge more greatly than the original remake game did. So
it's kind of like a weird situation too, because there's already people in the cast that already have like info of like the original events of the Final Fantasy VII as it originally like unfolded. Like Aerith, for example, no, it's our Aerith. Sorry,
I still call her by Aerith. I know.
It's hard, but yeah.
Well,
so just
Aerith, it's I don't quite get like if she knows for a fact the history or if it's more just kind of like feelings or premonitions that she has. I don't know like how lucid she is in terms of like, does she have explicit knowledge of events or more just a feeling of how things should be or how things are? I guess I don't quite.
I feel it's in the latter. I feel like the live stream, because she can read it and it's somehow synchronized and has visions from all different timelines, and that's why she kind of acts like a know-it-all. Maybe.
Yeah, I feel like she's like made contact with the original about like this is what's gonna happen. It's like, oh wow, that's weird. But yeah, it's such an like you said, it's such an interesting trailer. Not so much of like the visuals. It's like, okay, that's things are happening for sure, but the narration is like it really makes you think of
the visuals are mostly Cloud and Sephiroth just walking. Like honestly, that's pretty much it.
And obviously the game's gonna be more open. It has to be. We're out of Midgar now, so who knows exactly what they're gonna do to the structure of the game. And then at like the final part of it, you see Zack carrying Cloud on his shoulders before it gets to the title of the game, and of course at the end of Remake, we see that Zack is alive in this.
Yeah, so I'm making sure I have all my events together. So obviously at the end of the remake, you see, a shot that suggests Zack's alive. And at the end of this trailer, we see a shot of Zack and Cloud arriving at Midgar, when before it was if I remember at the end of Crisis Core, it's Cloud like dragging the sword to Midgar.
Yeah.
Like after he just gets gifted to it from Crisis Core spoilers too, I suppose.
Wow.
It's difficult. Like you're just gonna have to roll with it. Go on.
It's hard to talk about Final Fantasy without its spoilers. But the thing is, I don't think we spoiled the biggest twist of them all, so that's all that matters.
Well, now I'm curious what you're referring to.
Are you talking like Sephiroth?
No, the biggest twist in the Final Fantasy franchise or Final Fantasy VII is Cloud's true identity.
Oh, okay.
Rather than everyone feels like the biggest, spoiler in FF7 is the end of this one. I feel that's more like shock value than story purposes, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I pulled up a YouTube video of the end of Crisis Core. More on that later. Where Cloud is just fucking dragging the Buster Sword to Midgar after he just gets gifted it to him by dying Zack. Like, you just take care of that thing, man. But obviously, at the end of this new trailer for
within an hour of Final Fantasy VII, you buy a better sword anyway.
Well, that's just for like gameplay convenience.
I know.
But obviously, at the end of Rebirth trailer, it shows Cloud and Zack like arriving at Midgar together. So
yeah.
But at least I feel like in the remake that the Buster Sword's still useful for the end of the game.
Yeah, on a gameplay standpoint, I actually really enjoyed that about Remake. One of my Remake, I reviewed it. I gave it an 8, but I actually from a gameplay standpoint, I really loved how the combat worked in that game, how the equipment worked in that game in terms of like you end up with like 6 weapons for each character, and they're all have different uses. They're like I won't say they're all viable, but at the end of the game, there's no clear best. Well, maybe now that people like crunch the numbers, maybe there mathematically is, but there's no like overtly this is the ultimate weapon of the game. You have to use this. Just use whichever one you want.
Not gonna lie. Speaking of reviews for this game, I don't know. Like, do people just did we play different games? Like every time I remember when the game first came out, a lot of people in our Discord chat give it like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. I feel like this game is almost perfect. It's just
Remake?
It's just different expectations, right? Because like when especially because I was talking with a friend like the other day, and like they're still bitter about like how the remake project is going, because there's still a lot of people that like wanted like a 1-to-1 straight remake of FF7, and that's what they were expecting. And then remake, by the end of it, it is very much not that. And Rebirth, from what we see, it is very much not going to be that.
No.
It is its own very different thing.
Yeah,
And to me, as I've already played those games, even like I know those people have already played those games, but for me, like I think that's more interesting that they're doing a separate, different thing.
I'm
That's
in
like
the same boat too. I don't want to play the same game again. I played this like a million times. So with their graphics, well, we could just mod it, you know. It's
Well, by
just
the
like-
way, I still think like I played Final Fantasy VII on the PC version, which isn't a perfect version of the game, before the remake came out, so I could like be as like so I can make the comparison more educatedly. That's not a word. As I could. Final Fantasy VII, I still think is a great game, and you should play it if you can, if you're able to acclimate to the fact that it was developed over 2 decades ago. But as for like the remake, I'm actually totally on board with it changing. The only thing about the remake part 1 that I just thought it was a little bit too backloaded. Like they basically like welcome to chapter 18, you know, motherfucker, and then like 30, it's like the next 30 minutes are just like completely wild. Maybe some people like that, but I wish they kind of ramped up to it a little more. It's just that it just kind of bends a ton in the last 30 minutes of the game, last hour of the game, which I thought they could have paced a bit better. But I
feel like if they deleted the Hojo's lab, I feel like the game would have been
Hojo's
so
lab was a bit, yeah. Like we got to have a dungeon here. That was a little bit, nah.
Like go back through the sewers to find the
Oh,
room for
yeah.
Leslie's
Okay.
unnamed girlfriend or fiance.
Leslie,
It's like,
Leslie's fiance who died, who was never named, and then you got to fight Apis or whatever his name again. I don't want to nitpick though. I love the game. I'm really looking forward to Rebirth, and
and then just to reiterate that like it was confirmed by Nomura, Hamaguchi, and Kitase that yes, this remake project is a trilogy, 3 parts, and they're already working on the final game as well as they're developing this one.
So who wants to bet where the game's gonna end?
And I don't know. It's probably gonna be somewhere new. There's no, I feel like it's impossible to if they're trying, like I don't know how this game like still sticks with the original FF7 if they're gonna make it diverge this much. I have no idea.
You feel like the ending of this Rebirth is going to end somewhere completely different that we have no idea where it is?
I think so.
Or do people want to speculate it will end at this one of the original PS1 game?
I think this will be totally, by the end of this, it'll be unrecognizable to the original FF7.
I'm trying to think, like maybe the part of the game. Like the thing is like based on how far we were able to get in game 1, like how can they make this a trilogy? So the pacing is going to have to change slightly. But there's also stuff like the huge materia like stuff. They could almost cut that entirely. I don't think that really adds anything to the game. So if they like diverted from that, I'm not gonna be like, how dare they not be faithful? I want to fight on a train as Sid or whatever. But maybe like the section of the game where if obviously this is making tons of assumptions on how the plot will even play out, but where you have to play as Tifa for a bit because Cloud is injured and out for the count for a bit. I guess spoilers for the original Final Fantasy VII. Like that might work. Where like part 3, you start playing as Tifa to get Cloud back on his feet. If they go that direction, even who the hell knows? Because now Zack's around, so like. Yeah, who the hell knows? Like maybe instead of playing as Tifa, who takes like the protagonist role for a short bit in the original game, it'll be Zack instead. No idea.
Like trapped in the Avid Children universe. That's what I'm getting from the trailers. Like he's going into the church, and everyone looks like they're like sick and ill. It's like, oh, he just went to the Avid Children world by accident.
And as we're talking about Rebirth, Alex Donaldson did put up another feature on the site that has kind of a weird title. It's about how he's talking about the story divergence possibilities with not Kingdom Hearts. I gave away the lead there with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth going full Kingdom Hearts, which I think is kind of an title. And because going Kingdom Hearts, I think kind of has like a negative connotation to it, just in general, even
I
for
agree
fans.
with that as well.
But reading this feature, Alex is a big Final Fantasy VII fan, and it's actually pretty accepting and positive on what the possibilities are for the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. So if you saw our tweet, which got a little bit of traction on social media about Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy going full Kingdom Hearts, I encourage you, if you're at all interested, to read past the title, because the article is a bit more level-headed than the headline might suggest. It's also a lot more positive than the headline might suggest. Kind of talking about how this is kind of pretty much exactly what was set up in the first game, how it fits, how it allows them gives them the opportunity to tell a twist on the story that people have been kind of admittedly wanting to see for a while. If things didn't have to happen in the way they did in the original game. So give that a read if you're interested. Figured I'd shout it out here as we talk about the possibilities with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And we also kind of talked about this because it's inherently linked. Alongside the announcement of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, we also learned about Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. This is an HD remaster of Crisis Core, which originally came out on PSP. And this remaster is coming out for basically all consoles, including Nintendo Switch, PC, PS5, PS4, Xbox. Has this been dated? I saw the trailer for this, but it has not been, as far as I can tell.
This winter.
So
Rebirth is next winter. This is this winter.
Yep.
Yeah, I like how next and this is still like, people don't always agree on, is this winter, next winter the same thing, or no, next winter is the winter of 2023 into early 2024. All right, so this winter we'll have Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, and kind of the most interesting thing about this is just the direct comparison to the PSP game. The English cast has new voices to match their voices in the remaster. In the remake trilogy. Obviously, this reintroduces everyone to Genesis / GACT, and then of course all the other Crisis Core characters. And like I kind of said, my memory of this game is a bit foggy. So if this is key information for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I don't know. It feels like a pretty smart way to reintroduce what had happened in this game preceding the events of Final Fantasy VII.
It's so weird. It's so weird for them to label this as a remaster because,
looks so different.
It's very visually different, very more high fidelity. They definitely went back and redid fucking all the art assets in this fucking game, and even spruced up the battle system. So it's so weird for them to label this as a remaster. I like Crisis Core, so I'm excited for it. I always thought it was a very quirky game, but I like Zach's character.
What was I gonna say? Is this actually developed by CyberConnect, or is this actually in-house by
in-house? There's no CyberConnect on any of this.
Oh man, I thought I heard rumors that it was CyberConnect. It's like, oh, this is what Final Fantasy VII Remake would have looked like if they were handling it.
No. There's as far as we know, there's all in-house with Square Enix at the moment. But yeah, this is going to be, also has the Japanese cast returning. So as you mentioned earlier, Brian, for people who are playing this in Japanese, they will have to explain to their loved ones and to their friends who GACT is in the year 2022.
Well, my question is, who is going to replace Reno's voice if they do redub it again? I feel like they would just reuse the old lines for the Japanese version because Reno's voice actor passed away in the Japanese version.
I'm not sure. I don't know if they'll recast him.
Yeah, he is super famous. So.
Yeah. But I mean, at some point, if you need new lines, you can't recycle old lines.
Yeah, that's true too.
So this would be the time to recast if you're going to go that direction, because they're going to keep on using Reno in future projects. You're going to be stretched thin on that.
I remember the story being interesting and actually really enjoying even the goofy stuff with Angeal and Genesis and Sephiroth and things like that. But I remember the gameplay, there's some of the dungeon type crawling sort of thing you do ended up being really grindy. I remember you learn a skill like Cosmic Punch or Comet Punch or something like that I ended up just spamming all over the place because it was the most effective way to do things. So I'm glad to hear that the combat was tweaked. Because I think it kind of needed it.
I remember at some points in the original Crisis Core, I don't want to battle. So there's a viable strategy to hug the walls.
Yeah.
To skip battles.
It's never a good sign when you're I'm enjoying this game mostly, but I want to avoid battles because they're not that fun.
Yeah. I know this song. That's what you do when you're doing Palace of the Dead in Final Fantasy 14.
Oh my god.
And also people did mention Angeal's feather is in that Rebirth trailer as well. So
was just gonna say, I remember the original game. So easy to exploit the materia system. You become so like brokenly like strong in the original game, except for fighting the secret boss. That is though.
I hope they don't change the script at all, because there's some just legitimately funny moments that I think they should keep as they were.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm excited
check
to
out that
see.
dog.
I'm excited to see Cisne in this new graphical style, updated graphical style. She's pretty cool. I like Cisne.
Of course, now my brain is being very helpful. Like, me, Gaga, or whatever. But yeah, so that'll basically be Square Enix's big offering for this year, and I think it's kind of a pretty interesting one, because it's, not only was Crisis Core never released off of PSP, but it was not even never digitally available, so you couldn't play on Vita, you couldn't play it on PSN, on PS3, or anything like that. Just a UMD disc was the only way. Yep. Don't have a working PSP, you can't even play it on a TV or a Go or anything. That's the only way. We also got another trailer for this. Is one I'm actually legitimately kind of excited about. Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. This is the mobile compilation game with a tagline like "another possibility for a remake" or something like that. And what this kind of is a reimagining of the Final Fantasy VII compendium of games as they were, including the original game, including Crisis Core, including Dirge of Cerberus, including Before Crisis, I think was listed as being on there. So it's kind of like, as we knew it up until this trailer, it felt like a way to experience the story of Final Fantasy VII universe at a higher level without having to diverge to all the different consoles and gameplay types in a bite-sized format, using some of the new assets from the remake, obviously dialed down for the mobile experience. And
this is your turn-based Final Fantasy right here, fans. Right here, turn-based.
I probably would just play this for the Before Crisis, since there's no easy way to play that game, and
I'm pretty sure they said it has Before Crisis. Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
and Advent Children.
Yep.
And is all the story going to come out at once, or is this just like episode?
This is episodic, I think. I don't know exactly. Mm-hmm. They haven't really laid out exactly how it's going to be rolled out, but it's not going to be all at once for sure.
Damn, that's going to take forever then.
It's targeting 2022 for a closed beta of some sort. We got a new trailer for it, and the trailer shows gameplay sections from multiple games in the series. I both enjoy the 2D art of this game and kind of like the semi-cheapified, almost Kingdom Hearts 1-ish art for the 3D models. The combat looks more like Remake, of course, just with a little bit more menu command based sort of thing. And they show some gameplay with Cloud in his like Advent Children outfit, with playing as Zack. Obviously, some familiar locations from the original Final Fantasy VII, including like the fight with Rufus on the Shinra rooftop. But then at the very end, this is, of course they did this. It's showing Cloud and Sephiroth heading to Nibelheim as part of that initial like major story event in Final Fantasy VII, which I guess hasn't happened yet in the remake. Well, it's happened chronologically, but not gameplay wise. So near the very end of this trailer, in like the last 10 seconds, there's some interesting variations shown of the very popular event of Sephiroth standing in front of the Wall of Fire, which just raises a whole bunch of other questions about what this is potentially going for its fork of the narrative. I don't know how better else to describe what was shown here. I guess I'll just say it as it was. If you haven't seen the trailer, it shows Sephiroth standing in front of the burning city. Only as he's turning to face Cloud, he kind of like does the like record scratch on the VHS tape and replaces Sephiroth as we know him with a seemingly younger version of potentially himself, a character with silver hair, but it's much shorter, and I don't know if it's been confirmed anywhere about who this is or what it's referring to or what even, when does that take place. Basically, it's the giant what the fuck at the very end of the Ever Crisis trailer saying that it might also take some liberties with the events as we knew them for this series. This is me shaking my fist at Nomura about like Nomura. I don't know.
No,
is there any more?
We don't even know if it's like the Nomura's at fault or if it's like Kitase that really wanted to diverge or Nojima. Like
Nojima does this.
It might be Nojima.
I find it hilarious. No matter where you go, you read comments. They always blame Nomura for everything, even though if he's not the culprit, they'll still blame it on Nomura. That's the hilarious part.
For what it's worth, my shaking fist was facetious. Like I'm okay with them taking liberties like this. Go ahead, Josh.
But you definitely see some like a tiny bit of like what the monetization of Ever Crisis is going to be, because we were assuming that it's a free to play title. But you see, like throughout that trailer, that some people have like different outfits in it, so that might be part of it. Might be like
They've confirmed what it is.
like
It's
a weapon
gacha.
Is it a weapon or a character gacha?
It's a character gacha.
Where did they confirm that?
I just saw it. Well, I saw a Reset Era thread last night where they confirmed it.
Oh, that'd be interesting to see how that shakes out then.
Yeah,
I'd have to look into that.
there's
Because
some scenes of
last
Aerith in a
night-
different outfit and Tifa in a different outfit.
Yeah, last I heard it was like weapon with character skins, but I'm not exactly sure where those sources are coming from.
Well, we'll have the closed beta later this year, which might elucidate on some of that a little bit. So I don't know. I'm still excited for this. I guess I don't really have any reason to like. Well, if I play it, I tried like the Nier Gacha and it turned me off a bit. I'll try this, and if it's too onerous, I'll just watch the cutscenes on YouTube or something. But I still think that this is an interesting project. I think it would be cool if it had like a PC release also. But right now, it's still listed just for mobile. Because I just need to refresh my memory on what exactly happened in Dirge of Cerberus, and in I never got to see like Chow said before Crisis because that never came out officially in English.
Funny you
things like
mentioned that the developers of this are the ones behind Nier as well. Applebot, they made the Nier reincarnation. They're
Oh,
also
no.
making this, so we'll see.
And the last piece of news from the Final Fantasy VII stream, and this might have actually been shown slightly beforehand. I'm not 100% sure. Final Fantasy VII.
This kicked off the event. Like this is the
All
very
right.
first thing they showed.
So Final Fantasy VII Remake is now available on Steam as of yesterday as we record. So obviously it was on Epic Game Store basically about exactly 6 months ago. So it seems like it was some sort of 6-month exclusivity contract. Now it's available on Steam. Don't know if it has any like significant performance differences between the Steam and the Epic version. No announcement of Xbox at all. I don't know if a significant number of people are waiting on that, but still seems to be not there quite yet. But cool to have it on Steam for those that have been waiting specifically for that platform.
I found it interesting for that trailer that they also have like the Steam Deck logo as part of that trailer, and makes me think like I wonder if like more and more publishers and developers are going to start adding the Steam Deck logo for their upcoming game.
And it's interesting because like even the footnote during the trailer says now available on Steam and Steam Deck. The fact that they're like explicitly calling out is like almost like a separate platform entirely is an interesting take.
I guess that is kind of the way to go about it, because it's like just because it's on Steam doesn't necessarily mean that it's on Steam, well, like playable on Steam Deck. So like pointing out that, yeah, no, this does work on Steam Deck. We've tested it. It's verified. It'll be a good experience is something worth mentioning when you're discussing game platforms, I feel like.
I find the most hilarious thing is like all my friends bought this game again just so that they don't have to deal with the Epic Game Store.
I bought it also. Like there's discounts to bring it down to $40. So I was like, okay, fine. I guess I'll buy it again. I only ever got the base release and the DLC on PS4, so I never got on Epic Game Stores. Maybe I want a little.
Part of me is like wondering, should I get it on Steam? But since Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is coming to PS5 only first again, I'm guessing it feels like in a year and a half or whatever, we'll just be doing the same song second verse where it'll release on PS5 and then maybe on Epic again and then on Steam later. I don't know if the cadence will be any different.
That they're developing for PS5, not PS4 this time around, so we'll actually get to see like what their vision is for just.
Well, I'm not so sure, because the fact that they're like going out of their way to like shout out Steam Deck, maybe they don't want to go with Epic anymore. If it's like maybe they think there's more benefit in trying to push for a Steam Deck support or something, rather than taking the Epic cash for keeping it off Steam for a bit. Who knows?
I feel the same thing too, though. I feel like this whole series got botched because of exclusivity. I feel like if they actually didn't do exclusivity deal, I feel this game would have been a massive hit. But now we're locked into PS5. Like, I mean, we're not. How many people are going to have a PS5 next year? Is it going to be a lot? Like, even at the end of the PS4 cycle, I don't feel like the install base is large enough to specify the exclusivity for Rebirth. That's my take on it.
Well, we obviously don't know the financials in terms of like how much is Sony offering, how much is Epic offering, in terms of like minimum. It used to be, I don't remember if this was officially confirmed or if it was just scuttlebutt, but like the way that the Epic offering worked is that it was like they paid for a minimum sales like guarantee. Regardless of how well it's sold on Epic, they would get like the revenue as if they had sold some minimum value. Don't know for certain if that was ever confirmed. That was like during the height of the Steam versus Epic hoopla stuff.
It's also worth considering that developing for a single platform at a time might just be the best way to get all of these games out quicker. Because
Maybe.
like I would not be shocked with the release window for this being late 2023. There is a chance that we get the third part in 2025. A slim chance, because it's like a 3-year gap between the original part 1 and part 2. And if part 3 is also going to be PS5 exclusive, most of those assets are going to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows?
And they did. We mentioned this very briefly in passing, but they did confirm that they have started on part 3 as well. So I'm hoping that the cadence will pick up. And like you said, the fact that the assets, at least a good chunk of them, have largely been created, should hopefully mean that we're not waiting as long between parts 2 and 3.
But also Square Enix.
Yeah.
Can we just appreciate that next year we're going to have 3 mainline Final Fantasy releases? Because next year will end up being 7.0 for 14 as well.
What's the third?
16.
Oh, right. I'm so dumb.
7.0 for next year? Is it that early? I don't.
Every 2 years.
Oh my god, has it been that long?
It might be December of next year.
Yeah,
but
it only feels like it's sooner because Endwalker came out in December. So.
Yeah. To wrap up I guess before I just decide that we move on. So based on all the Final Fantasy VII trailers that we saw, Ever Crisis, Reunion, Rebirth, Remake on Steam, I don't know, just any other final comments on this? I think obviously this is pretty much everything that fans were asking for, and it's a lot to get excited about.
It was a surprise. I'm very glad that it was like a good succinct stream. Like it was like barely like 13-14 minutes long. It's like, this is what we have, and yeah, peace out. Like it was a really good anniversary celebration for the fans of FF7.
It's a very effective stream in my opinion, but if you show
Meanwhile,
things
at Capcom,
more on that later.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. But yeah, go on, Chow.
So it's a very effective stream, because if there wasn't like, if you keep showing games that people don't really interest about it, they kind of zone out, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like that's what happened to Guardian of the Galaxy. It was a good game, amazing game even, but it's just, people weren't really that interested at that time for it, so people just tune out for that entire stream.
Yeah, but I'm excited to see just like where they're gonna take the FF7 Rebirth. Well, how much more wild they're gonna go, and also like I'm really curious to see how they've really touched up Crisis Core. That was an interesting one to bring back. It makes me think, like, if they're gonna bring back Crisis Core, do they have like any plans to bring back Dirge of Cerberus?
Let's not go there, guys. I'm putting a bet, guys. Let's see if this ever comes true. I will say that Aerith is the last boss of the Final Fantasy Remake series. It's on the podcast, and we can go back to it.
I don't know if anyone's gonna remember that, because we might not see that for another like 7 or 8 years, dude.
Yeah, but I'm just gonna say this in this podcast, and we can use that as a reference.
All right, we'll remember to come back here.
Okay.
So two other small pieces of Square Enix news that were announced not at the Final Fantasy VII event, just also this week, that we're just bundling here for convenience. Well, this one's actually not really news that was announced from Square Enix. This is just, I don't know, I'll just announce it. So eagle-eyed patrons of the PlayStation Network noted that there is now a listing for Tactics Ogre Reborn, which is something that a lot of us have been eagerly wondering when we will see in an official capacity, due to the fact that the title at least had leaked a long time ago alongside all the other NVIDIA GeForce leaks from last year. Tactics Ogre Reborn had a new page on the PlayStation Network, alongside a new logo for the game, alongside some artwork, and enough to really kind of get excited on knowing that it's real, kind of not confirmed really, but all but confirmed, as close as it can possibly get outside of an official announcement from Square Enix itself. And I do know that Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together is one of the favorites for for Adams particularly, but is a a well-regarded game outright. And maybe I'll just hand it off to Adam if you're really excited for Reborn. If what you saw from a short little snippet from the leak on the PlayStation Network is got you more excited or less excited, or if you're still just kind of been waiting for more official news.
Well, when it was in the NVIDIA GeForce Now leak, it was called just Tactics Ogre Remaster, I think. And then, like, when that leak first came out, people were wondering how reliable is this and whatnot. And, the further we go, the more and more spot on it feels. Really revealing games like ActRaiser and Voice of Cards and Chrono Cross and everything. So now... I guess I should say a few months later, there was a trademark for Tactics Ogre Reborn, and that was kind of fuel to the fire. It was in the GeForce leak. Now we have a trademark, and now we have a store page. So it's just kind of like you said, we're pretty much all but confirmed that it's coming.
Well, the store page seems to be dead now, but everyone's already got all the assets from it. So.
Yeah,
the store page didn't have any text. It literally said "dummy," but it had the key art and the logo. So first of all, we're sort of wondering, is it a new Tactics Ogre or whatnot? I know it said remaster in the NVIDIA leak. The art clearly shows characters from Let Us Cling Together, like Denim and Quechua and
Vice.
It's a very first meeting.
So it feels like it's going to be another version of Tactics Ogre. Now, is it going to be a full from the ground up remake, or is it going to be just a really touched up Let Us Cling Together from the PSP version? Not sure.
We didn't see any gameplay, just
yeah.
So
we're not sure about the platforms. It was obviously in the GeForce Now leak, so it's PC, PS4, probably Switch.
Maybe
who knows?
Who knows?
Poor Xbox.
So in terms of when might this get announced? Square Enix usually holds a Square Enix Presents in the summer. They did the Final Fantasy VII event, obviously, and maybe that's it. So if this game were to get announced soon. Would it be announced at an event? Maybe at a Nintendo Direct because they haven't had one yet. Who knows? But I'm excited for it. I really, really like Let Us Cling Together on the PSP. I think it's pretty much an all-timer. There's only just a few things about it that I would ask them to change. For example, this is probably the biggest one. When you get a new class in that game, it comes at level 1. Whereas even if your characters... Because in Tactics Ogre, you level up classes and not characters. And even if your classes are level 30 or 40, you get a new class that's level 1, you pretty much have to just baby them for a bit to make them viable. Okay, I guess I gotta take my level 1 class and have them throw rocks at these guys to gain experience. And it's just have them come in at some average level or something, just take out on the TDM, things like that. That's the only thing. I wonder, are they going to add voice acting? I kind of hope they don't.
The Sega Saturn version has voice acting.
Yeah, but...
Come on, we have Koyasu as Lance. Okay, come on.
Is Koyasu Dio? Is that the right
Yes, it's Dio's voice. He plays Lancelot Hamilton. And
I'm assuming Dark Lancelot, or actually Light.
No, the Dark Lancelot is voiced by Sho Hayami. If anyone knows who Sho Hayami is, he plays usually sinister bad guys.
But yeah,
I like how Chow is just an absolute fountain of
I love Japanese voices. Okay, I love it.
So I'm wondering, just wow, we're basically just waiting for the official announcement now. So
pretty much, this will come at any time. Well, we know it exists.
What if Square Enix just announces this with a press release?
Maybe it'd be the most Square Enix thing ever. Oh, okay, I guess.
But I also feel what is it? Because of what's that game called again? Triangle Strategy. I feel like that was to test their HD tactics market and to see if this is viable and they could go full development on it. I feel like they probably use the same kind of approach, HD 2D maybe.
Speaking of, thank you, Chow. No more really to talk about for Tactics Ogre Reborn. Obviously, whenever an official announcement is made in any capacity, we'll let you know. Hopefully, it accompanies a trailer to give us some indication of what sort of remaster it is or remake if it is. But alongside, we also learned that Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent, this is the mobile follow-up to Octopath Traveler that released in Japan back in 2020. You can now pre-register to be notified for its release in North America and Europe on July 27th. So speaking of HD2D, this is, Octopath Traveler's follow-up. It seems to have been pretty darn successful in Japan. We had to wait a while in order to get it officially in English, but late July is getting pretty packed, and including for Octopath Traveler fans who wanted to try out this game. It is a gacha game for in some regards, so that immediately kind of makes me a little bit wary. It does make a couple different changes with the narrative structure and with the gameplay structure that I think are quite interesting. The fact that you can get like eight characters on the battle at once, only they switch out in like teams, I think is pretty cool. They've of course collaborated with NIR in Japan, because why not? I don't know if Josh, did you play the Japanese version of this game at all?
Only very little, because it's such a narrative heavy game that I was like, I don't really want to try to wade through this in Japanese, especially because like. But yeah, I know that I'm familiar with the developers. They're very much going for the Another Eden style of narrative structure, where like it does feel like a single player RPG, just like you do have to gacha for characters. But that's not to say that like you're trying to like always get like higher rarity characters. Some of like the lower rarity ones can be leveled up and be viable and be very useful for certain team comps. People who played it, the Japanese version, seem to really like it, and the way that they're unveiling like the story. Like I think it's already done with like its first arc of these three villains, and they're on to the next arc in Japan, and people have generally been like very on board with what they're doing. So I'm interested to giving it a shot. Hopefully, I don't know when, because it's coming out during a busy period, but I do want to try it out.
Well, that pretty much covers us for everything Square Enix from the last week. So
there was a whole lot. One other tiny small thing.
Oh, what was this? What other tiny small thing?
They released like the final two era trailers for Live Alive.
Oh, right.
Aha. So yes, the present day and what was the other one?
Distant future, where you play as a little robot named Cube, who is definitely a sphere.
Obviously, that is coming out in like basically almost exactly a month and a few days.
Yeah, coming out basically at the same time as that Octopath game. Good job, Square Enix.
And Digimon and Xenoblade. It's going to be a busy time.
Okay.
So there's a couple other different sorts of showcases in the last week. We're going to move on to this one, which I think everyone kind of knew what we wanted to get out of this. And this is the Capcom 10 Years of Dragon's Dogma digital event.
No, that's wrong. First, there was a Capcom showcase at the very beginning of the week, like on Tuesday or Monday. And then the 10 Years of Dragon's Dogma digital event was a separate event that happened on Thursday.
Oh, okay. I was just jumping to that event because I think that was the more interesting one.
Well, that'd be weird, because the Capcom showcase came out first and had really big news for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak people.
Okay, maybe I'm just less interested in Monster Hunter, but we can go to that first.
That's fucked up. He's like, nah, fuck.
Well, I don't like Sunbreak. I'm already aware of it. I'm ready for it. My Hunter's ready. It's releasing in a few weeks, and
this is actually really big news, people. For the people following it, this is actually really big news for the people who like Monster Hunter. That's crazy.
So what was shown for Monster Hunter Sunbreak at the Capcom showcase, Josh?
They when the Capcom showcase first started, they went straight to Sunbreak news, and they confirmed a lot of shit that's really, really exciting for Monster Hunter fans coming to Sunbreak. They unveiled that the Jungle locale is coming back, and that was introduced at the second generation of Monster Hunter titles, which had Freedom 2 and Freedom Unite. That's a really, really iconic locale for people who played Monster Hunter for a long time. They also confirmed a lot of returning monsters, really big monsters coming back, like Gormagala from 4, which is really one of the most popular monsters from Monster Hunter coming back. So that was really, really exciting. And then the one that really caught a lot of people off guard, everyone off guard pretty much, is Espinas from Monster Hunter Frontier, which is Monster Hunter Frontier was a MMO game for Monster Hunter that was never released in the West. So, like, for a lot of Western players, this is going to be the first time they're going to be fighting Espinas. No matter.
Well,
for a lot of them.
Oh yeah, I thought you were going to say it's going to be their first time fighting a frontier monster. I was going to be like, nah, if you played World now, but
no. But for a lot of people, it's either first time fighting Espinas because they've never played Frontier, most likely. And even James, wrote a feature explaining why Espinas is coming back, and that's a major deal. You want to go into that for a little, James?
Yeah, the gist of it is that back when Monster Hunter was still very relatively new, Freedom Unite, a lot of the new monsters they added were Frontier inspired, or well, not Frontier inspired. Like most of the new content was very explicitly from Frontier. Like the Great Forest map in Freedom Unite was originally a map in Monster Hunter Frontier. Hypnocatrice was a monster in Frontier. Lavasioth was a monster in Frontier, and apparently Espinas was originally like intended for Freedom Unite, but at the time, so many Frontier players were like, "Wait, so what are we paying a subscription for if all of our best monsters are just going to come to the mainline games?" And so it's been over a decade since Freedom Unite, and that was the only time we ever saw Frontier content in the mainline games. So it's really fascinating that now that Frontier is dead, we're finally getting Espinas, and it's like, I wonder if that means we might see even more Frontier content be brought into the main line. Because I do know that a lot of people at the time kind of weren't huge fans of the way that Frontier kind of handled things. They felt that monsters were too flashy, that the moves were too flashy. But the funny thing is that the mainline series is kind of caught up to Frontier in that sense. So it makes a lot of sense that the more grounded Frontier monsters might be brought over because they'd be a great fit.
Yeah, and also they showed off the subspecies for the Daimyo Hermitar and Pyre Raknakanaki, and those look really cool. And then they released the demo earlier this week on June 14th, so people can try that out now. They can fight against Astalos and the new flagship monster Malzeno in it. And try out like some of the new switch skills and the switch skill swap mechanic in that. Also, to round it off, they announced the roadmap for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, and one of the very first things they're bringing to it in free title updates, they're bringing back Lucent Nargacuga from Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, along with the Forlorn Arena map. And that really caught me off guard because you don't see Lucent Nargacuga that much in Monster Hunter, so that's really exciting to me. So to me, when I saw this news, I'm like, this is freaking awesome. A lot of people were kind of like, on Sunbreak, like it's cool that it's coming, but I think people really, 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 really like got excited for it once this new batch of info came out, and once they like kind of gave a better idea of like, okay, we're really pulling out all the stops for Sunbreak.
I heard something about like the demo that's now available. That you have only like 10 minutes to fight Malzeno or something like that, which is actually quite tough.
Yeah, that's they usually do like for the demos that they release for Monster Hunter, there's usually a super tough quest that has like a really strict time limit against like the flagship, like the one for Rise. You had like a strict time limit against Magnamalo in that one. So yeah, a lot of people are getting caught off guard with Malzeno because it is a different kind of monster than like you're expecting when you first see it.
And obviously, we'll have our impressions on that soon because it's only a few weeks away from release.
Yeah, and I can't believe Brian was like very just like, yeah, Monster Hunter.
So I didn't obviously have the knowledge of the Frontier connection to that. Sorry, maybe I just gave away what I was more interested in. So
yeah. Also, like you're gonna get to it, but like also at the Capcom showcase, they had Itsuno there saying, "Hey, there's gonna be 10 years of Dragon's Dogma digital event happening in 2 days." Dragon's Dogma was crazy, wasn't it? Peace out. That's all he did at the Capcom showcase earlier in the week. Now you can go to what you're gonna say.
So they had a short little digital event for the Dragon's Dogma 10-year anniversary celebration, and obviously I'm not gonna bury the lead. People are really excited. Is this where we hear about Dragon's Dogma 2? They have a new website. They have a new Twitter account. I think they had a new Instagram page or like a new like I don't know, Snapchat or something. Are we gonna get Dragon's Dogma 2? Well, after about 10 minutes and 10 fun minutes of like talking about the development of the game and concept art of the original game, and some footage from that. They were all wearing like zip up shirts. They reveal underneath that they were wearing T-shirts with a new logo for Dragon's Dogma 2 is in development, and that's pretty much all we got but I think it's all we needed and all maybe most of us expected. Got a new logo. Did not get any information about release screenshots, platforms, anything like that. But I think that everyone's completely on board and stoked just to know that Dragon's Dogma 2 exists and is a thing. Hideki Itsuno is still going to be the director. It also carries over the talent from the original game, Daigo Ikeno as the art director and Kenichi Suzuki as the project lead. So basically, Dragon's Dogma 2 is in development. It's got Dragon's Dogma veterans on it. It's going to be using the RE engine, which is kind of not a surprise because it seems like everything Capcom does nowadays is on the RE engine. And RE engine has proven to be basically super versatile, and I don't think anyone's going to have any qualms with anything they do using that engine, it seems like. Go
for it.
I want to say my one request for Dragon's Dogma 2 is separate out stamina and MP in some fashion, because Dragon's Dogma 1, like, there's a stamina meter that you use to cast spells and like sprint. And I remember actually when I played the game on PC, speaking of mods that are intrusive, when I last played Dragon's Dogma back in like 2018 on PC, I released on PC in like 2016, 17, something like that. I downloaded a mod that it gave you infinite run stamina, just because otherwise you're huffing and puffing as you run across the map before you have the access to get like the waypoint stones, like the black stones you get. So maybe some tweaks to the magic system there, but other than that, I think that Dragon's Dogma has already got a lot of unique different gameplay flavors with the pawn system, with the climbing on monsters, and of course the spell casting is still some of the most impressive like magic systems to date in an RPG. So if it's just more of the same, only tuned up with the new engine and a new decade of know-how from the developers, I'm totally on board.
Yeah, I hope they keep the identity of Dragon's Dogma. Don't try to like have a spin on like what like a Souls like or whatever, or try to lead me into that direction. I want them to keep what made Dragon's Dogma unique. And knowing Itsuno, like, I have faith in that man. He's a wonderful individual, a very talented game director when it comes to like fulfilling like what like keeping the identity of like a series like Devil May Cry intact. I thought like that 10 years of Dragon's Dogma event was really cool also, because like I know a lot of people came there for the Dragon's Dogma 2 announcement, but like the lead up to it was really, really neat, because Itsuno was talking about like, his first like interaction of like a role playing game, like through D&D tabletop style games, and how he entered Capcom, and how Street Fighter 2 was like a really, really big inspiration from from an action game standpoint, and that's how he came to appreciate and love action games. And he worked on stuff like Star Gladiators and Rival Schools. So like try to like get those different inspirations from past projects and try to make something totally new in the RPG genre was a really, really interesting thing, especially like when you were like conceptualizing like if there's gonna be really big enemies in these games that you keep like sending us. We don't want the players to just like keep on slashing the feet. We want them to be able to do like interact more with the monsters. So that's what brought about being able to climb monsters in the first Dragon's Dogma, and also like they wanted something like offline but online, and like how they conceptualized like the pawn system in that game. Like it's all really, really neat stuff like a game development standpoint that he got to share briefly before unveiling the sequel. So
I think they struck a good balance. Obviously, people were there for the sequel, but they didn't dilly-dally too much. About 10 minutes of just talking about the history of Itsuno's time at Capcom and how Dragon's Dogma came to be. Enough footage and concept art, and then kind of naturally ramping up to the release of now we have a chance to revisit this series that we know people have been eagerly anticipating a new game potentially. Well, surprise, here it is. So I don't know. It felt like a really good, well-paced video that wasn't too long in the tooth. So Dragon's Dogma 2, we know Alex is excited, and probably will be a ways out now, but cool to know that it exists. And like you said, faith in Itsuno, because Dragon's Dogma 1 was unique and had a flavor all of its own, and is available on PC, PS4, and even on Switch. It released on Switch back in 2019. So if you haven't played it, I do suggest it. It's one of my favorites. All right, one of the earliest events from the last week. This actually was not too long after we recorded our last episode of the podcast, was the obviously Microsoft and Bethesda showcase, essentially their E3 replacement stream, including obviously Microsoft's RPG projects, Bethesda, Obsidian, all the things that were in the works for there. So we didn't quite know exactly what to expect here. We got a few things out of it that I think people were, expecting that we'd see, a few omissions that we were hoping to see but didn't, and then of course a few surprises. So we'll just go through them. The biggest thing here that we saw was that we finally got our first extended look at the upcoming Bethesda title, Starfield. Obviously, originally slated to release this November, had been previously delayed into an unknown date next year. Didn't have anything quite a lot of information about how this game actually looks and plays, other than like some small pieces of concept art and some things like that preceding this event. Well, we got about a 15-minute little snippet of footage for this game, showing like a space combat, showing just exploration, some details on the number of planets and things like that. It showed some just interesting interactions with how dialogue works, about how it has a whole like almost dogfighting gameplay system alongside as well. I don't know. It was good to finally get eyes on what this game actually looks like and what it plays like.
Todd Howard presents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did a really great outfit for that event. Good job, Tom. But it's just a very early sneak peek at this game and like what it could potentially be. Like we saw some footage, like you said, and like the saying, "Oh, it'll have like thousands of planets." Like, okay, what does that actually mean? Because I'm sure to like a lot of like average like people, like who's not really into like video games, when you hear thousands of planets, like that seems, pretty like that seems neat. But for us, like who knows how like the realities of game development and people who play games, they're like, okay, I'm sure some of these planets, a good chunk of these planets, there's not going to be anything interesting there. That has to be because
a lot of information kind of came out after the fact in interviews with different publications and things like that. I don't know if I've got them all synthesized here in my head, but they did mention that several of the planets do use a sort of procedural generation. They did mention that there's like 3 or 4 main cities, so it seems like that there's like kind of a golden path where it's like these selection of planets are like the key bespokely made ones, and then the other areas are more like radiant, where other planets are there for some sort of like resource scavenging or to like fill out the world and things like that, but won't actually have like bespoke stories written in them. At the same time, though, they did reveal that the player protagonist here, the game can be played in first or third person. The dialogue is in first person. The protagonist is not voiced, which seems to be a response to the Fallout 4 experiment, where they decided to voice the protagonist to kind of a lot of scrutiny, which I actually think I really enjoy when my character isn't voiced in these, because usually you're talking to a character, you're selecting a dialogue choice from the bottom of the screen, and once I select one, I don't need to hear the character say it out loud. I just read it, sort of thing. So that's mine, and it makes it more immersive for me. I know certain people prefer to have that, but I think this is a good decision. They did talk about how it's not seamless, like you don't fly from planet to planet entirely, which I think that's fine. It's not what I was imagining the scope of the game was going to be anyway. I think I would like to see a little bit more of the RPG elements. They showed a little bit in this footage here about like choosing a background, the character creator in general, and there seems to be a lot of different backgrounds that you can select from. It shows a little bit of like the skill trees and things like that. One thing that I think is interesting that has seemingly been really popular with their games recently is Fallout 4 added the settlement building mechanics, which some people thought was a little bit like tangential to what they wanted out of an RPG, but then they kind of doubled down on that with Fallout 76, where a huge portion of that game is like building your own base. Here they've kind of tweaked it seems like, and they had a whole section about building your own spaceship, and it seems, based on the small bit of footage that we saw, like really, like I have a trailer up right now and I have it screenshotted where you have different like vendors which make different like parts. Your ship will have different stats like engine, shields, things like that. Different sorts of a whole economy based on buying different reactors or buying different ion beams and things like that. Cargo, jump range, mobility. So it seems like there's almost like a game within a game in terms of spaceship crafting, which I think could be potentially really interesting. So I don't know. There's a lot to see here, and there's a lot to chew into. It's hard. We did a pretty good job diluting it all down into like a 15-minute montage, touching on all the different systems.
Yeah, I think I need to see more, like, because it's definitely, it's like one of those weird things. Like you said earlier, it's like when they reveal, it's like, yes, that looks like a Fallout or a Skyrim in space. That's what it would look like, and I need something I don't know. I want to see
kind
more
of what
like
I want
the
what I want to
systems
see is
look
something
like.
like unedited. I want to just see like someone picking up a controller and just playing and just saying like,
Yeah.
what does it look like to pick up a quest? What does it look like to look in your log and see where to go and where the objective is? What does it look like to run into an enemy and have to get into combat and then
Yeah,
loot that enemy?
I think I want to see like what do traits look like how does like building your character look like what sorts of like I don't want it to be like because I don't want it to be like, oh, you can like shoot the gun better, to be your traits. Like I want something that like really embraces like the space setting and what that entails alongside it. I just don't want it to be like, oh, it's just a Fallout, but you just happen to be in space, but you still have like identical traits and skills.
One thing I
And that's
hope they get rid of is everything when they showed like the combat footage here. First of all, the combat footage looks a little bit like not a great frame rate, so it's still in development. I think it's good that they pushed it back. But every time he defeats an enemy, there's like an EXP flag that shows up in the center of the screen with like the bar filling in like how close they must be to a level up. It almost feels like to me like that's almost serving just the trailer. Like, yes, this is an RPG. You get EXP when you defeat enemies. I'm like, I don't need that. I hope I can turn that off. And usually these games have some degree of of how you can edit what shows up on the UI. But to me, it just felt like, yep, this is an RPG. 5 EXP for killing that spacer, 5 EXP for killing that spacer. Like that seems a little bit silly.
definitely is this day one on Game Pass also, right?
I assume so because it's under Microsoft's banner now.
Okay.
And yeah, don't have any more release dates other than next year. I'm assuming it'll be holiday next year. One of those games that I think we'll have to see some more unedited gameplay or some more hands-on opportunities to really get a feel for how the whole thing is coming together and things like that.
All right.
I do think that the dogfighting gameplay looked more fully featured than I thought it would when they kind of touched on that as a kind of a big surprise. I think that worked out okay. So other things that were shown at the Microsoft event. By the way, this is kind of related, so we'll just talk about this. In an interview with IGN, they asked about. So we know that they're working on Elder Scrolls 6. They revealed that several years ago with literally just a logo and like an image of like some mountains, something that could be so generic it could be from any fantasy setting. It was asked about what is the future of Fallout itself, the main series. Todd Howard mentioned that Fallout 5 is, I don't want to say in development, but is coming, but not until after the Elder Scrolls 6. Long story short, Fallout 5 is a long way away. This was not an announcement at the event. This was like answering an interview question. You might be like, why even talk about it then? Well, they talked about it because they were asked about it. So Fallout 5 is not something they're giving up on, and it's just that they only have so much manpower, and Starfield is their major project of the last several years, and Elder Scrolls 6, of course, is still in early development. Fallout 5 will be after that, so I'll be waiting on that for a bit. They did announce a new expansion for Fallout 76, The Pitt, or Fallout 76 Expeditions The Pitt, one of those names that has both a colon and a hyphen. So I kept Fallout 76 installed on my computer for a long time. I was pretty darn thorough in that game. I'll put it this way. When they announced the shuttering of the Bethesda launcher and you had to like re-download your games on Steam, I have not done that yet for Fallout 76, and I've not even watched the trailer for The Pit because I just don't think I really care anymore. Like I got my fill. I enjoyed it for what it was, even as buggy as it was and as slipshod as it was at launch. So I don't know if anyone felt any differently from that, but it didn't register with me pretty much whatsoever. And outside that, I think that was pretty much it from the Bethesda side of things. I guess we'll go over into the Obsidian side of things. We were hoping to potentially see some more footage from their upcoming RPG Avowed, which takes place in the Pillars universe. Long story short, we didn't see that. Instead, we got a trailer for a new game called Pentiment, which is a narrative-focused dialogue. I don't even know if RPG is quite the right word. But it's an adventure game that takes place. When does it take place?
16th century Bavaria.
I was about to say France. I'm like, wait, it's not France. 16th century Bavaria. So it takes place in like the late Middle Ages. Yeah, I don't know if you'd call that early Renaissance. I hope I have my centuries right here. The trailer has a very like distinct kind of unique art style that I think some people were put off by. But the trailer is pretty much exactly what I described. It's basically dialogue choices in terms of knowing almost like an adventure game. In terms of acquiring information from townsfolk, being able to share that with interactions with various people in various areas. Very small focus.
I know some people who saw the art style and they were immediately interested.
It's very unique. It's quite different, and it takes
it's like medieval era like drawings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is
not
Josh,
not like medieval art, but like medieval drawings.
Mm-hmm. So Josh Sawyer is the head behind this, and he was a major creative mind behind Fallout New Vegas and the Pillars of Eternity games. So we've known for a while, he's shared on his social media that he's been working on a smaller scoped dialogue focused RPG. So this game is not really being like marketed as an RPG. It has dialogue choices and it has
Sawyer
some, like,
called it RPG Light.
oh, he did. All right.
Twitter.
So this is November of this year. It'll also be on Game Pass. I think it's kind of cool that Microsoft is allowing their acquisitions to work on smaller projects like this. I do think they showed a little bit of like grounded footage at the event, but that's just kind of another game that is being made. Both Grounded and Pentiment are being made by like 10 to 15 person teams because, of course, they've got big teams on Avowed. And do we know what they're like?
Too.
Yeah, Outer Worlds 2. That was it. Like, I know there's another major project that they got in the works. So that seems to be like the four major things that Obsidian's working on at the moment. But Avowed probably just needs more time in the oven before they're ready to show it. Because it's on Game Pass, like I will obviously just pick up Pentiment just to see like what it's like. I know some people saw this and they're like really eager to play it, and like so I saw someone say like Josh Sawyer could punch me in the face and I would enjoy it or things like that. I do think he has a good track record, and I do think that the Pillars games are underrated. So I do think that this will be an interesting game to play through and be kind of a more experimental take on some of the things that we like to see in RPGs, but in a different sort of setting and in a different sort of gameplay framework.
I know what Josh Sawyer said on Twitter was some people were comparing the game to Disco Elysium, like a narrative-focused, choice-based game. And he was like, Disco Elysium, not really. He said the games he would compare it most to are Night in the Woods and Oxenfree. Those are the games that he compared it to.
Interesting.
I know a lot of people think really strongly of both of those games. So maybe that's the whole reason why he brought that up comparison. But I don't know. I haven't played those, so it might be an interesting new experience for me once I get to try it out. So a few other things that were shown at the Microsoft event. This one is I guess I'll talk about this one first. We got an announcement of remasters for, or is remaster the right word? For new release offerings for Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 5 Royal. Obviously, in the context of the Microsoft event, they announced that they were coming to Xbox, Windows, PC, and to Game Pass. The Persona 5 Royal is releasing on October 21st. Persona 4 Golden and Persona 3 Portable, that's the version of the game that went with for Persona 3, are listed as coming soon. And then after the Microsoft event explicitly, we got some PR press release directly from Atlus saying that these are also coming to PlayStation 5 and to Steam. So all together, with both those announcements together, we have the Persona 3 Portable, Persona 5 Royal, and Persona 4 Golden coming to Xbox consoles, coming to Game Pass, coming to Steam if they're not already there, starting this year with Persona 5 Royal and next year for the other two. Obviously, really
to clarify for people also, the PlayStation 5 is for Persona 5 Royal, but for Persona 4 Golden and Persona 3 Portable, those are coming to PS4, and obviously you can play them on PS5 via the PS4 backwards compatibility feature for them.
Yeah. I guess that's something that still is like foggy for me. Like, so once Persona 5 Royal is on PS5, what is the difference between playing P5 Royal PS5 version versus playing P5 Royal PS4 version on PS5?
Presumably, this version will like have support 60 FPS. Presumably, because that's the footage that we were given from that trailer. We're assuming that Persona 5 Royal on PS5 will run at 60 FPS, as opposed to if you run the PS4 version of Persona 5 Royal on PS5 now, that's still not 30 FPS.
Gotcha. I didn't know if the PS5 boost or whatever took care of that or not.
No.
Right.
Sometimes you have games where I feel like the difference between a native PS5 version and a native PS4 version aren't very different. Like, if Persona 3 Portable had a PS5 version, would it be like any different than a PS4 version? Like, really? I don't know.
So obviously I'm excited for this because I have not played Persona 5 Royal yet. And I actually downloaded when P5 Strikers came to PC. I kind of downloaded it just because it felt like an event, like Persona game on PC. I know Persona 4 Golden preceded it, but I'd already played that game. This will be kind of my opportunity. I never finished P5 Strikers because obviously I didn't play the original game, but this will be an opportunity to grab P5 Royal on Steam and then follow that right up into Strikers if I'm really feeling like I'm enjoying the characters in the world. Obviously, another key interesting take here is that they're going with the P3P version of the game for Persona 3, because as most of us here are kind of aware, there really is no purely definitive version of Persona 3 because you have Persona 3 FES, which includes like the answer, and then Persona 3 Portable, which includes the female protagonist. So how do we feel about the fact that they decided to go with portable version of the game for this re-release opportunity?
I think for a wider audience, it's the better choice for a few reasons. One, people like the female protagonist, and it's the only Persona game that has that, besides like Maya from Eternal Punishment. That's a big draw. Two, you can control all your characters. In the PS2 versions, you can't. The idea kind of was that you are the protagonist, and everyone else is literally like their own person acting on their own, so you couldn't control them. Which honestly, I think it works out fine. But if given the choice, I'd rather, choose your own controls and like actions that you're doing in battle and whatnot. So that's a big draw. And there's also a couple of other things that I had forgotten about in FES that are kind of annoying. One, this is kind of getting to the weeds a little bit, but if you play as a male character and you social link with the female characters, it's always romantic. I had forgotten about that there is no like romance or friendship routes.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And if you romance like Yukari and Mitsuru or whatever at the same time, they'll get like really mad and you'll break the links. So I remember when playing through that game, you have to be careful. Like, okay, I have to get Yukari to rank 10, and then I can like continue on with Mitsuru's social link, or else you're gonna make someone mad. So like stuff like that. But really,
wait, so I want to make sure I understand. So in Persona 3 Portable, they added a friendship route?
Yes.
Okay.
You can just choose to be friends, and I think even if you choose to be like romantic with more than one character, like just doesn't matter. So stuff like that. But I think the real reason why they're going with portable is that supposedly like the coding for the PS2 versions is just like very, very messy. And this is obviously outside of my like zone of knowledge, but stuff like how models are used in battle and in scenes and whatnot. And apparently if it were to be ported, it would just be a huge hassle. Whereas the PSP version is just a lot, I guess, easier to work with. That's probably the real reason they did it. But one other thing is like in the original Persona 3 and in FES, the fatigue system is a little bit, you have to work around the fatigue system where you can only play for so long in the dungeon before your character gets tired, and then they like will basically be useless in battle. So you can't really grind. If you wanted just to play for an hour and just battle for a bit, you can't really do that because your characters are going to get tired and sick. Whereas in the PSP version, they basically got rid of that. It's still barely there, but really just barely. So you don't have to worry about fatigue anymore, which a lot of these re-releases for Persona games, they do that. They kind of make them as frictionless as possible, for better or worse. But yeah, stuff like that, I think for a wider audience is more palatable.
So before even this announcement had come out, you had played recently through Persona 3 Portable, just on a whim because you had played the FES version.
I actually played Persona 3 Portable because I was kind of clued off that this was happening, and I was just like, I want to play this version so I can talk to it.
Well, it seems to have paid off. Do you think people lose anything by the fact that when you're like exploring the schools or anything, it's all menu based now instead of actually moving the character?
Maybe for like a moment, but then once you get into like the third, fourth, fifth month of the game and you just kind of want to like get around quickly, I don't mind just like navigating through a menu where it's just like go to the gates, go to the classroom, or go to the second floor, or go to the clubhouse.
This is a dumb thing, but you know what immediately popped in my mind? I'm like, it actually does kind of sound nice. I'm comparing in my head from a different video game series the base mechanic of like Fire Emblem Path of Radiance versus the monastery from Fire Emblem Three Houses, and I'm like, you know what? Sometimes a menu is just fine. So
just like I just want to go to the barracks rather than actually just like walking over to the barracks. Now I know some people are like, well, the portable version doesn't have like the animated cutscenes, which fair, but there's not that many of them. There's like 5, I think. There's not a lot.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I think that is a problem with the Persona games, the newer ones. That once you're so far into the game, the schedule just becomes a routine. You just don't care about anything. You just keep doing the same thing over.
What about
so in terms of the presentation, it's fine, I think.
I was gonna say, what about the loss of the answer? Do you think that's a big deal?
The answer is not very popular. I actually like it, but it really more draws to like the Persona series, more dungeon crawling routes than the like social link stuff. So like if you're a dungeon crawler head like me, you might like the answer, but if you're just like wanting to, hang out with the characters and whatnot and do social links, you can't because it's not really that. And some people don't like the story. I think actually the story is fine too. You'll hear a lot about how Yukari is treated in the answer, but I think it's actually like, it's actually kind of thoughtful and works out, I think, even if it's not like perfect happy rainbows, because that game is not perfect happy rainbows. But yeah, it's one of those things that like me, I like the answer. Most people probably wouldn't and don't care that it's gone.
I'm in that boat.
I thought it's fine. I didn't mind the answer either.
I didn't like the gameplay aspect of it. Agus didn't really have much control over the personas that you can use. Like, the fusion system is completely bonkers because you don't have the... What do you call the kind of like encyclopedia where you can use like past...
Compendium. You don't have a compendium.
That thing is completely missing in the answer, so it becomes just like cumbersome to get the persona you want. It was just annoying. And yeah, I did not like the answer in the gameplay wise, and story wise. I felt like it's just like kind of like filler. It's like, yeah, I know about this stuff. It's just feel like the characters just have trouble moving on, and it's
to the point.
And it's like I don't need it. Didn't offer anything new.
And I know we focused most of this discussion on this news bit about Persona 3 Portable, because obviously I think that's the most interesting part of the bunch here. As soon as Persona 4 Golden came to Steam, I think people were kind of hoping like, well, it's going to get a PlayStation port, right? Well, here it is. And then obviously Persona 5 Royal coming to PC is also a big deal, and that's the one that's dated for this year. So exciting. There's P3 Portable, the fact that they had to decide between two versions to go with, and it's the one that was like least accessible before this announcement. I thought it just lended itself to being the kind of the key discussion point there. But really kind of cool to see that now we're in a world of multi-platform Persona kind of just being a thing now.
Yeah, it was insane. It's crazy. I think it was funny. You had the 48-hour scramble after the Xbox announcement, and then they were very it's only for Windows Store PC because they were holding back the announcement for 48 hours for the Steam and PlayStation announcement, which is sort of amusing, I guess.
Yeah, like we have a 6-month store exclusivity, and then we have 48-hour news of platform exclusivity, which is like, sure, go make that paper, whatever Microsoft is willing to get you.
Does that even do anything? Then again, I don't know. I feel the same way with the Street Fighter 6 announcement.
Well, the thing is also like, oh, go ahead about Street Fighter 6.
I was just gonna say, it's like when you hear Street Fighter 6 being announced and you see it in a Sony conference, it's like, oh my god, is this gonna be a Sony exclusive again? Oh my god, please no. Then,
just to be clear, like for example, a lot of games are like shown in the Nintendo Direct first. Like I think Chrono Cross was. At the very least, I know Legend of Mana.
Yeah, Nintendo Directs do that often with Square Enix remasters.
And then, but like usually how it is like, for example, I'll use Legend of Mana as an example. It's shown in Nintendo Direct, and like as soon as it's over, Square Enix releases a press release saying Legend of Mana coming to everything. It just was shown in the Nintendo Direct. But this case, they showed the Persona games, and Atlus released a press release at the time saying coming to Xbox, and everyone was like, "What about PC? What about PS4, PS5?" And there was like rumors and leaked like press releases, like is it coming or not? But Atlus didn't actually say anything until like 2 days later, so it was kind of awkward. They just kind of held on to it for a while, just because they can.
Well, it's probably how to
try to get people to associate Persona with Xbox.
Yeah, I bet you there's definitely some money exchanged hands behind the scenes for them to, get that, just associate Persona with Xbox for at least 48 hours, and then.
I don't know, man. In Persona games, there's always a menu color that represent the game. Red for Persona 5, yellow for 4, and blue for 3. Green can be for Persona 6, guys, and it'll be Xbox exclusive.
Yeah.
I think green would make a cool UI color, and if anything, it would just be potentially announced in like an Xbox event. That would be interesting to have it announced at an Xbox event, even if it ended up being like multi-platform.
The real question is, do you think the older Personas are gonna come to modern platforms now?
No.
Eventually?
No.
Dang! Wow.
No one even entertained the idea.
That's crazy.
I think it is possible for like other PS2 games, like Digital Devil Saga to get like the Nocturne treatment, maybe. But I think that's more likely, even if not very likely, than Persona 1 and 2.
Look,
Is
man,
my thought.
P3P is coming over. Get the rest of the PSP personas. Come on.
Nobody cares about P1, and P2 is kind of... I don't know, I feel like they had to redone the entire game a lot for modern audience, and they don't want to put that effort in.
Dang. Alrighty, well, you heard it here first. No one's a believer except me.
Just like Chow was on record for earlier, you're on record that are you confident they'll bring P1 and P2 outside of their cage?
I have to believe because no one else will believe.
So we also got some announcements. I think that's it from Microsoft's Direct Studios. We didn't hear about the new Fable game. We didn't hear about anything else in terms of the games that they have been working on with some of their internal studios. Got a few like third-party announcements that were shown at the Xbox presentation. The most interesting one of this is probably from Team Ninja, and this is from publisher Koei Tecmo. This is the Neo team. We've been kind of wondering, at least I've been kind of wondering what they've been working on since the release of Neo 2, which is one of my favorite games of the last couple of years. They revealed a new action RPG called Wolong Fallen Dynasty. So this is a game that takes place in the Three Kingdoms era of ancient China. And actually, right before this podcast, I was asking Josh and Chow, who are a little bit more well versed on this just region of history, about exactly like what period of time this is. It's the time that's depicted in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms novel. And this trailer is mostly a cinematic trailer. I'm actually entirely a cinematic trailer, just kind of showing the vibe of the game, and it's not that far away. It's slated to release in early 2023. It was shown at the Microsoft event, but it's also coming out for PC and PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. So I don't know. What do we think about Team Ninja's new game from the Neo team?
I think it was really funny that they were teasing Lubu at the end of that trailer.
Don't chase Lubu, guys.
Yeah, do not pursue Lubu. I'm really excited to see this. At a later interview with IGN, they were saying that this is like de-emphasizing like the loot aspect in this entry, so it won't be like crazy like loot heavy driven like previous Neo games. It'll also have a jump button, so that's the only other details they've disclosed about
I don't
the
know.
title.
It sounds like they're aping Elden Ring if it's got a jump button.
Uh-oh.
I was just gonna ask, do you know who the protagonist is based on that trailer, or you have no idea?
I mean, so it's one of those weird things. Like they said it's gonna be player created, but based on the title, like it may be Zhuge Liang because Wolong is kind of a translation for sleeping dragon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is pointing to Zhuge Liang. But I don't know exactly if they're gonna go lean in that direction based on the title alone. Because I think they're saying it's a player created character, right? So
that's the same thing with Neo 2, wasn't it? You get a player-driven avatar as your character. Versus the first game where you get to use what was his name? William something? Forgot the Neo 1 main character's name.
William Scottish man.
Okay. I don't know. My friends just call him the first weeaboo. That's what they call him.
Well, they kind of played with the history with the Neo game with like the player protagonist kind of occupying the role of Hideyoshi, but also with Tokachiro. Like they're really kind of loose with it, where they obviously was just inspired a fictional take on the time period. So they might do something like that again, where it is a player created character who ends up taking kind of like the active role of a historical figure instead. But yeah, ever since it was confirmed that the Neo team was not the team behind Stranger Paradise, I've been wondering what they've been working on, and this it's kind of a cool mythology that I'm not that well versed in. I do also kind of when they say that it's not going to be as loot based as the Neo games, I wonder if it's going to be more like, I hate to say this, but maybe more like Dark Souls or like Elden Ring, where you have kind of like explicit weapon types or gear types that are then linearly upgraded rather than having a system like Stranger Paradise or like Neo, where it's a system of attributes that you can use the different mechanics of the game to modify or tier up or tier down or ranking systems or colored loot and things like that. I remember when I was playing Neo 2, I would spend a lot of time streaming it and having Adam watch, where I would just spend literally hours at like the blacksmith just tinkering with the weapons and gear. So if they can streamline that in any way, I'll be all for it. But yeah, that'll be coming out early next year as a multi-platform game. Did they explicitly say that it is an RPG? I'm trying to actually find that in the press release for it.
I don't think they did.
All right. I said
More
action RPG at the start. I guess we don't know 100% for sure, but I guess we'll reconvene once we actually see some, because this was just an introductory cinematic trailer. So once we see some gameplay or some other features for it, we can reconvene on that. And it will be available day one on Game Pass. We got a new trailer for Diablo 4. I don't know if this is that interesting, but it is coming to PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox Series, Xbox One, and PC next year. We got a new trailer for the Necromancer, a pretty long, cinematic trailer for the class, and it is one area that Blizzard likes to flex their, cinematic chops on that. So pretty thorough trailer on that. We did also get a little bit more of an extended gameplay showcase for the game, just kind of showing the game more at a high level of how it plays and how it feels at this point.
I was a hardcore Diablo 2 fan, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of the series have burned a lot of goodwill over the years.
I mean, I'm still interested in definitely like the new mainline entry. Like, it's kind of a weird time because after like the reception to Diablo Immortal and how that's going, like it's kind of like we'll see. But what they've shown so far, like
It's
I'm interested.
promising.
I'm interested in giving it a try. It's just Blizzard's in like in a really really weird spot, both in and outside of like the realm of video games. So like the gameplay they've shown for Diablo 4 so far, I'm like I want to try it out, but that's definitely a separate matter from like, will I feel good trying it out?
Like there's always something wrong with it. It's like, okay, Diablo 3, they finally fixed the game and we pull out all support for it. It's like, oh, thanks. And then there is Diablo Immortal with completely bonkers monetization, and now they have to like even said for 4 is like this game's not pay to win, okay, guys, nothing to worry about. But
I mean, it's the different development internal teams. Even then, I don't think Diablo Immortal was like internal. I think that was like Netty. I forgot who was it. NetEase? I forgot. But it's just, I think it's really cool that like Diablo 4 is just like it's going to be a cross play and cross progression for all the platforms it's releasing on.
That is pretty neat. The fact that it's
Like,
cross play everywhere.
I think the best thing is that it's released for all consoles, because that tells you that they have a lot stricter guidelines and the monetization wouldn't be as scummy as something that was released on the mobile game, right?
Yeah, I mean, this can't launch like, let's say, with like a real money auction house like Diablo 3 did. I think they're really like being wary about that. It might have like a battle pass. It might have like some like stuff like in-game monetization stuff like along those lines, like how other games do it. But I don't think it's going to be as egregious as let's say Diablo 3 at launch and Immortal. So I'm looking forward. I liked what they showed, and I'm like, okay, I like action RPGs. I like Diablo. I'm probably going to give it a shot. Hopefully, it comes to outside of BattleNet when it comes to PC, but who knows at that point. But I'm looking forward to it. I know that's a very unpopular opinion at some places, but what can you do?
And then the 5 classes that they've announced so far, just sort of as a reminder, are Barbarian, Sorceress, Rogue, Druid, and now Necromancer.
Yeah.
Our favorite classics from Diablo 2.
A couple other gameplay trailers that were shown at the event. Here's one from a smaller developer called Coco Cucumber, a fantasy fairytale action RPG called Ravenlok. So it will be releasing on Xbox and PC next year in 2023. It'll be Game Pass on day one, and we got a new reveal trailer for Ravenlok. Much more like cutesy, like fairy tale art style. Almost kind of reminds me kind of like a Nightmare Before Christmas sort of style to it. I don't know.
This is the developers have had this ongoing thing called the Voxel trilogy, which is sort of like they're building their portfolio of like mixing with voxels and video games, and going with that visual style, like with Riverbond and Echo Generation before it. So that Ravenlok is like the finale of their voxel trilogy. And I think it looks really, really cool. It has such a distinct look. It has such a very fantasy-esque, like you said, Nightmare Before Christmas, but kind of like a more corrupted fairy tale type of vibe to it. And it looks pretty nice. Like I'm really glad that they showed this off at the at the Microsoft showcase, because I don't think I would have ever seen this if they didn't put attention to it.
Kind of like Coraline, but not quite as dark. It's a little bit more cheery than that. But yeah, it's kind of just it's unique graphical style. I think is really kind of cool, and it's kind of the most distinctive feature for that comes clearly through the trailer. But yeah, it'll be coming next year. No explicit time, but it's one of those Xbox PC joints. So it will be coming to Game Pass day one. And the last thing that we saw a new trailer for upcoming RPG Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn. This is a game that we've talked about, I think, at least once on the podcast before, from Kepler Interactive. It has been delayed. It was originally supposed to be released this year, I believe, but it was delayed into 2023. It is releasing on pretty much everything except Switch. It is coming to Xbox Game Pass day one. That's why it was showcased at the Microsoft event. Open world action RPG.
Yeah, I mean the main character has like an interesting tool arsenal. They have like a hatchet and like a musket on them, which is okay, sure. So the trailer shows like a bit of the combat footage, and they have like a fox-like creature called Inky who assists them like with like casting magical spells in battle and helps them out through platforming stuff. It had a pretty strong showing at the Microsoft event. Just like it just kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people. It's like, oh, it's that. For us, it's like, oh, it's that game. Like, they haven't shown like gameplay of it until now, and like that looked cool. What they showed of it.
Yeah, we got like some behind the scenes footage before about like the world and the environments, but not like this trailer was like basically 2 minutes of combat and traversal. So for our first extensive look at how the game will look to play and look and feel to play. But yeah, maybe it might be one of those diamonds in the rough for next year. We don't know, other than 2023. They pushed it back. I guess they say early 2023, but it's kind of up in the air at this point. And I think it kind of covers it for everything that was shown at the Microsoft event. Just in general, how did we feel about their presentation last week?
Thought they had a really, really strong showing. Probably one of their best like conference type dealios, because a lot of the games they showed off actually had gameplay in them and actually showed what players will be doing when they play their games. Like I think Microsoft has had like a really bad reputation of like going to these conferences and like only showing off CG footage of their games and not and showing off like games that like are far off, and like they like even if they share like a release window, they keep delaying them. So this one felt more tangible and more realistic than the others, like because they were very clear in saying these are the games that are coming out in the next 12 months for the Xbox. And and you can see that like a lot of them, it's like, okay, yes, I can see that this realistically looks like something that you could be able to be played soon.
Yeah, I remember when they had one of their first reveals after they showed off the new Fable game and the new Avowed teaser, like at the same event, I believe, which were both like right in our wheelhouse, but also both so far away, which is why we haven't seen them since. So I do agree that it's kind of nice to be able to say, like, here are all games that are stuff that is ready to show and something that you'll be playing in not too long, and not something you don't have to be waiting on for forever. Yeah, I guess I say that, but then they also did, tied to this event, talk about Fallout 5 in an indirect manner, but at least under their internal studios, a little bit more focus on stuff that will be playable on Game Pass within the next 12 months.
And let it not be kind of missed that the fact that every game shown off is coming out within the next 12 months implies that we're finally getting Hollow Knight Silksong within the next 12 months.
Yeah. That was still a really funny trailer, because like, hey, there's a Silksong trailer here, and then there's still no like release date or window shared for it aside from that 12-month window, obviously. But I was like, it's cool to see it there, but man, I was really expecting like a release date at this point after that.
Did they show Hellblade 2?
No.
Nope.
Oh, that surprises me. It's not really in our wheelhouse, but it feels like that's the game that has been kind of at the forefront of a lot of their conferences since like 2019, right? It's been a while, but good things take time, I guess. We also did have this week the PC gaming show. Not as much there in our RPG wheelhouse as in some of the other areas, but a handful of things to talk about. One game that they revealed was a trailer for a game called Demonschool. So I'll be honest, I have not watched this trailer. I will watch it right now. Adam, tell me about Demonschool.
So this game is statedly inspired by Italian horror, like vintage Italian horror specifically, horror manga, and they don't say this specifically, but it looks a heck of a lot like Persona 1 or Persona 2 in terms of the the isometric sort of style of like the characters and in battle. It seems like it's a little bit more tactical RPG than those games are. But it has the similar sort of vibe. I think they said there's like 15 different characters you can meet, and yes, you can have like relationships and social links with them and whatnot, which weren't really in the old Persona games, but obviously inspired by the new ones. And it's got this sort of I believe they said the color specifically, lots of like dark purples and maroons and whatnot, are what they picked up from vintage Italian horror. So it looks like tactical RPG school sim, like literally in horror.
It's like trying to blend like modern Persona systems, but with that look of older Persona games. Like you definitely have like that counter at the top right corner of like what day it is, the weekend, and then like in the older Persona games, you can travel around via a menu of like different parts of the school, and like I really dig like the Italian horror vibe they're going with, especially like there's a point in the trailer where they're fighting against like this like gigantic skull and like it splits open in between the middle to like pop out a brain that you start wailing on. Yeah, it's a really, really cool game.
And it's my favorite part about this trailer, as I just watched it, is when the characters are like running. They're all running in like this exaggerated sprint animation where they're like really lifting their knees up high and like pumping their arms. I don't know. There's just something like cheery and kind of fun about it in a world that's pretty gloomy and dark. But slated for next year. Yeah, coming out for everything, including Switch. Slated just to be announced 2023. Cool little 2-minute trailer introducing the game, showing plenty of gameplay as well, even though it was the introductory trailer. So really cool thing that was a surprise out of the PC gaming show. We also got a new trailer for a game that's been kind of semi-vaporware for a while, and that is the System Shock remake. Got a new trailer at the PC Gaming Show. The trailer shows a lot of gameplay from the first-person perspective, just some gameplay about some of the other systems, including like the hacking systems and some of the other combat. No new information about a release window, which is interesting. I should say it's slated to come out on everything except Switch. No new information about a release window, even though they had previously stated that it would be out in 2022. So we don't know if that's still the case. They did not reconfirm it here. They just left it open-ended. So long story short, we still don't know when we'll see the System Shock remake. I wonder if this is a chance, even though I know it's a little bit dated, once this game does have a release window, I might want to play through the original. But
yeah, this remake's been in development for a long time, it feels like.
Let me click the link and see. Oh no, I guess we only started covering it in 2021. Because I think before that point it was mostly just like screenshots about a project that wasn't very far along.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it didn't even grab a publisher until December of 2021. Yeah, so that explains it. We also got some stuff at the PC Gaming Show about some early access launches. So because these are early access, we might not spend a ton of time on them. This is a dark fantasy roguelike called The Unliving. And the early access for this one actually got a launch date of October 31st. It was actually supposed to get an early access last year, but just got, development's hard and pandemic, so it got delayed a bit. So this is more of a top-down perspective game, kind of like one of those. I don't know if this genre has a name, but like a horde brawler where you have to fight like hundreds of enemies on the screen at once while you're minimizing how much damage you take. What was the game you were playing a few months ago, Josh? That was sort of like this.
Vampire Survivors.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that, but with a roguelike twist.
Yeah, this one's neat because like you take control of like a necromancer, so you're kind of building up like an undead army for you. So like any enemies you fight, you can turn them over to your side. And then if you want to use spells, you kind of do like the Diablo 2 thing of like you sacrifice some of your minions to go cast a spell. So that's a pretty neat thing to it. It has a nice visual style. Looks like a lot of fun and looks like fights pretty chaotic from what the trailer shows. So this looks pretty cool. I want to see, like, obviously I'm not like the biggest early access person, but once this goes like into like full release, I want to keep my eye on it.
And that pretty much just covers it for the PC Gaming Show. So the highlight was obviously the Demonschool announcement, but always cool to know that System Shock Remake is making progress, even though we don't have an official date on it quite yet. And this is one other major piece of announcement that will maybe wake James up a bit, I know that Adam has been looking forward to, is that we finally got announcement of a localization for Labyrinth of Galleria. It will be localized as Labyrinth of Galleria, The Moon Society. It will be releasing on PlayStation 4 and 5, Switch, and PC next year in early 2023. I know Adam's been looking forward to this. James maybe less so because he'd play it in Japan, in Japanese. But how do we feel that we finally got this information? I don't know if we were anticipating it or if it was a long time coming or what.
We kind of knew that it was probably going to be talked about soonish because we have that one person on Reset Era that's been talking about how it got pushed back into 2023 because of the backlog of Trails games that NIS has to go through. So I was thinking probably early 2023. So yeah, that's exactly when it got announced for.
Now, I want to remind myself, in Japan, was it only on Vita up to this point? It was a Vita exclusive?
No.
Okay.
It released on Vita and PS4 in 2020, and then it got ported to Switch last year.
Gotcha. So this announcement is basically announcing the PC release and a PS5 release, incidentally.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's kind of following up exactly with what we had heard from that one person on Era, Annie Hawk, basically saying, yeah, they're going to want to port it to PS5, Switch, and PC. And Switch had already been dealt with last year. So the two missing pieces to the puzzle, it's like fits together perfectly with what they basically said to expect.
So Adam, a lot of people seem to be very excited from like when this news went up. The response to it has been like a lot of people have been waiting for this. Seems like.
Yeah, it's like I definitely feel like I've probably been the main person that started that hype train, but there have been some other folks that have played the Japanese release over the last 6 months that got into it because they'd seen my impressions of the original release, and so it definitely feels like the hype has been slowly increasing for folks.
That's good.
So Adam, I know that you felt really strongly about Coven of Dusk, but haven't played Galleria because you've been waiting for the localization. For those that are maybe new to the podcast or aren't familiar with Coven of Dusk, like maybe not describe the game in too much detail, but can you explain like what about it made it resonate with you so much and why it made you excited about a potential sequel, a literal sequel?
First of all, I said earlier in the podcast I'm a bit of a dungeon crawler head, and this is a dungeon crawler. Even on that front, just talking like mechanics, it's a little bit different than the usual like experience wizardry likes that we get quite a lot of. It's got a very unique like doll system where you literally can have a party of up to I think like 35 units or something like that. You can manage it, but it's just like a really cool like game just mechanically. But of course, the first game it was like a character study almost of these two different characters, Dranya and Luca. And the way that their story is kind of told is really kind of heart-wrenching and very emotional with like a killer ending there. And so like if they can kind of hit that again and maybe iron out some of the like, like some of the niggling issues with the game in a sequel, I think it could be really cool.
I guess when they initially announced this as well, they built it more of a successor to Refrain rather than like a direct sequel.
Yeah, I guess by sequel I meant more. I know I said the word sequel, but I meant really follow up.
Yeah. So like for people like worried that do I have to go to Coven of Dust first? It's like sure if you it's still a good game like if you want to play it, but like it's not mandatory to understand what's going on in Galleria and
100%. There are some small connections to Refrain and the Witch and the 100 Night games, but those are completely like relegated to the post game, and even then, you don't need to have played those games. It's just like more of a nod than anything else.
Even Refrain had a Witch and the 100 Night post game boss. Like, I recognize the character. I have no idea what you're doing, but I'm going to beat you up.
Now, remind me, did Coven of Dusk get into our top 5 that year?
Yes.
Yeah. So highly thought of for the original game. I have not played it yet, but makes it very clear why James couldn't wait for the localization to play Galleria and why Adam has been eagerly anticipating it. So it'll be interesting to see if we feel similarly strongly about Labyrinth of Galleria next year. and see how it places in our 2023 awards.
Cool. NIS America
funny.
put up. Like I'm just saying that NIS America put up like pre-orders for limited edition of this game, for PS5, PS4, and Switch. It has your typical goodies of the game, hardcover art book, and OST, but it also comes with an actual Dungeon Divers card game and playmat alongside it. So for people who really want to,
I
see,
know I'm
physical
incredibly
goodies.
biased here, but that's probably one of the best limited editions they've done.
Yeah,
just looking at what it has, it's it's a full soundtrack. It's 2 CDs. It's got a good art book. It's got the full actual board game for only $30 more than I assume what the base price is going to be, unless it's $50 for the standard edition. Though they haven't put up the standard edition for pre-order anymore yet, have they?
I don't think so. I think it's only just a limited edition for now. So, yeah, for people who really want, the stock is limited. So if you want to dive in and get something potentially valuable, down the line, go for it.
It's cool that it also already has the Steam page up and running.
Yeah, NIS America is generally pretty good at that, at getting Steam pages up. Meanwhile, I think Digimon Survive comes out in a month and it doesn't have one for some reason.
Yeah,
Speaking of Digimon Survive, so we have only a couple more pieces of news here, to some other trailers that we had to slide in somewhere that got filtered in throughout the week. We got a release date trailer for Digimon Survive. Now, we already knew that the release date was July 29th for us in the West. It was just directly delivered to us from, I believe, the producer of the game. But it wasn't the announcement of the release date didn't accompany any other media or anything. So they went ahead and took the known knowledge of the July 29th release date and just packaged it into a new trailer of the game to release as a release date trailer. Showing a lot more gameplay this time. I know we were kind of joking earlier that they had, as we've gone through the marketing cycle of Digimon Survive, one of the longest trailers we had was one of the ones that was just 5 minutes of just the anime opening with very little even Digimon present. So not only did it have not much gameplay, but it didn't even have much in the word is this does this take place in a Digimon world? But so this release date trailer really goes hard on showing a lot of gameplay, both from the RPG perspective, but also in the
Adventure
novel-esque adventure game perspective.
Sorry, I know we moved on, but while looking at the Steam page, I found out that it is confirmed that Galleria is going to have a dub.
Oh, cool!
Nice.
That's nice.
But yeah, for the Digimon Survive stuff, I think the release date trailer is our first good look of the English UI in the game too. To be honest, so
yeah, everything else has been from the Japanese side of things. We've gotten a lot more. I feel like we've gotten a lot more just footage from the game in general from the Japanese side of Bandai Namco, and only certain snippets of it have been presented in a localized fashion. So this one, at least, we got an English version of this trailer as well.
That'll be coming soon as people decide which RPGs they want to get at the end of July.
Yeah, now we have this Xenoblade or I guess Octopath Traveler.
Live
Alive.
Alive.
That instead. Yeah, the week before. You got a week to finish Live Alive before getting into any of these. And then the last bit we have here is that we got a release date for the console port for Sword and Fairy 7. We announced, we talked back in May that it was going to release as Sword and Fairy Together Forever on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. It released on PC late last year. It will be coming to consoles on August 4th. So we got a release date for that. Oh, and alongside the release date, we got a new trailer for it as well, called the Together Forever Exploration trailer, which just shows some of the environments and some of the different locales in the game. And I think with that, we have covered all of the major beats of everything that came out of all the different events over the last week. So it has been a lot. And I think we even had to curate this list a little bit. There might have been some other little things that we just didn't have time to space in here today, or just maybe on the fringe of our coverage map or whatever you want to call it. So it's been a lot. And as we go later into the summer, as we potentially see what Nintendo is up to on their side of things, as other publishers kind of dial out and polish out all their different announcements for the later half of the year. We'll follow up on all of that. And then we'll finally get into, as we just alluded to a few minutes ago, the crazy release schedule as we get into July, as all these games that we've been anticipating, starting with Sunbreak later this month and going into Live Alive and Xenoblade and Digimon Survive and all that other stuff. It's going to be it feels like that this is the start of a very, very busy time of year when it comes to gaming in general, but specifically RPGs. If you remember back from 3 hours ago, all those features that we talked about at the top of the podcast, including Adam's Minstrel song feature, the feature on the Kingdom Hearts 1.5, 2.5 mod for PC, the refix, James's Steam Deck list, and the Knights of the Old Republic 2 Switch review are up on the site. All of the different things about the Final Fantasy VII event, the announcement of Rebirth, a reunion of the new Ever Crisis trailer, and all that news is also up on the site as well. You can follow RPG Site on all the social media channels. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. You can go to our Discord by going to discord.gg/RPG Site or hitting the link at the top of the homepage. Thank you to James, Josh, and Adam and Kite for covering a shit ton of news, to put it lightly, over the last week. And there's other things that we didn't even get to talk about on this podcast that we do have up on the site, such as some news about a Gundam game is in there. I don't know if you want to. Here's your chance to talk about it, Josh. Very briefly.
In the new trailer, you see Guntank do air launcher to air combos. There you go.
There you go. Guntank's a beast. But yeah, we'll follow up next week with another episode of the Tetracast. Will we be able to talk about Sunbreak then, or is that one more week?
No, we can't talk about it next week.
So next week, stay tuned. We're not sure yet. We don't know ourselves.
We can talk about particularly the new East mainline game.
Oh, right, because we'll have the information from Famitsu on that. We kind of teased that last podcast about how we're expecting what seems to be purportedly East 10 news coming soon. But until you hear from us next time, stay safe and take care, and we'll see you then.